Chapter 3783. Translated by Zephizi, edited by Elrianth, Signs of Atavism. Nye Tian couldn't help but tremble when he heard the fat cat's words. One could imagine how shocked he was. He didn't have a yardstick yet, so he didn't know how strong the 4 ancestral dragon bloodlines that the fat cat had mentioned were. However, judging by the fat cat's serious expression, the 7-fiend abyssal dragon tribe should be an extremely powerful tribe. Nye Tian, do you remember the myriad domain president Su Xueren? He belongs to the startling dragon bloodline. The fat cat noticed Nye Tian's confusion and said with a faint smile, the startling dragon bloodline is already considered very strong among all the dragon bloodlines. However, in front of the 7-fiend abyssal dragon, the startling dragon bloodline isn't even fit to carry his shoes. Nye Tian was flabbergasted and didn't know what to say. He had already witnessed the power of the startling dragon bloodline. The reason the startling dragon bloodline could become the myriad domain president was because of the powerful bloodline in his body. However, the powerful startling dragon bloodline was nothing in front of the 7-fiend abyssal dragon. This seemed a little exaggerated. After a while, Nye Tian became cold and asked the person on the ground, "Fat, you just said that the fellow on the ground is a sign of atavism. What do you mean?" "I heard that the 4 ancestral dragon bloodlines were extinct a long time ago. I didn't expect the 7-fiend abyssal dragon bloodline to still exist in this world." The fat cat frowned and seemed to sigh. "The fellow on the ground has the legendary netherworld dragon bloodline and possesses the strongest 7-fiend abyssal dragon bloodline. It's precisely because his netherworld dragon bloodline is too powerful that his body is showing signs of atavism. During the transformation from dragon form to human form, there was a problem and he remained in a dormant dragon state." Dormant dragon? Nye Tian was stunned again. He didn't quite understand what the fat cat meant. The biggest difference between members of the dragon clan and ordinary humans is that they are oviparous and not viviparous. The fat cat's gaze was gloomy as she said, "The members of the dragon clan are hatched from dragon eggs. They are born in the form of dragons. After a period of time, Xiaolong will transform from a dragon to a human, which is called humanization. Under normal circumstances, it's very safe to transform into a human. However, you'll have to go through a period of hibernation. When you wake up, you'll be able to evolve into a human form. However, under certain special circumstances, there will be some accidents during the transformation. If it's light, it might cause the little dragon to fall into a state of hibernation and never wake up. If it's heavy, it might even die before the hibernation. The little dragon before us is in a state of hibernation, unable to wake up." After saying that, Fat Cat could not help but sigh with a look of pity. "In that case, this guy isn't dead, but has fallen into a deep slumber, right?" Nye Tian furrowed his brows and asked cautiously. "His dragon breath is still there, but it's useless now. He's no different from a corpse now." The fat cat frowned and said, "It's a pity that the legendary nether dragon physique died just like that." "What do you mean?" Nye Tian was stunned again, not understanding why the fat cat said that the nether dragon clan was hopeless. It's usually impossible for a member of the dragon clan to wake up after entering hibernation. Basically, their draconic energy will dry up and they will die within a few days. The fat cat's expression was gloomy as she said, "This little dragon in front of you has been in hibernation for at least hundreds of thousands of years. The reason he can survive for so long should be because an expert sealed his draconic energy with a special method, so that his draconic energy will not dissipate and his dragon soul will not perish. However, after being sealed for so long, his draconic energy has already stiffened and his dragon soul has fallen into an eternal slumber. At this point, even a perfected golden immortal would be powerless to save him." Nye Tian could not help but frown when he heard the fat cat's words and was momentarily speechless. No wonder Ancestor Wu Ming said that the person he wanted Nie Tian to save was a dead person. At this moment, Ancestor Wu Ming looked at Nie Tian and asked in a deep voice, "Brat, can you save him?" He didn't disturb Nie Tian when he saw that he was deep in thought, but he couldn't help worrying when he saw the change in Nie Tian's expression. "Senior, he has been in hibernation for too long, and his draconic energy and dragon soul have been sealed for too long. I can't save him." Nie Tian's expression was unsightly as he sighed. "You can't save him?" Ancestor Wu Ming's pupils suddenly shrank and a cold light flickered in his eyes. A murderous aura surged from his body as he said in a deep voice, "Brat, your life was saved by this ancestor. Since I can save you, I can also kill you. This ancestor will save him no matter what price you have to pay." Every single word he spoke was low, murderous, and carried a resolute tone that allowed no disobedience. Ancestor Wu Ming was clearly suspecting that Nie Tian had the ability to save the Nether Dragon's physique, but he would have to pay a price, so he wasn't willing to help. "Senior, I, Nie Tian, am not someone who doesn't know how to repay kindness. If I can save him, then I will definitely help no matter what price I have to pay." Nie Tian's eyes flickered, but he didn't panic. He said in a deep voice, "But I really have no other choice." Looking at Nie Tian, Patriarch 5 Nether seemed to have sensed something. His eyes trembled uncontrollably, and his wrinkled face instantly filled with tears and snot. Nie Tian was startled. He didn't expect Ancestor Wu Ming to suddenly act like this. "Chia, this ancestor has protected you for so many years, but I still can't save you in the end." Ancestor Wu Ming suddenly turned around and looked at the frozen figure on the ground. He let out a long sigh and seemed to have aged in an instant. Nie Tian frowned with a gloomy expression. He didn't feel good in his heart. He also wanted to save the Nether Dragon's physique, but he really had no other choice. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt a fluctuation of aura coming from outside the cave. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Who is it?" At the same time, Ancestor Wu Ming's face sank. He let out a low roar and his figure turned into a ray of light as he directly rushed out of the cave. Nie Tian's brows furrowed as he followed. What is this thing? Why does it contain such great power? When Ancestor Wu Ming came to the valley, he didn't see anyone. Instead, he saw a blazing white vortex floating in the air, emitting a majestic and terrifying aura. This is... At this moment, Nie Tian's figure landed. When he saw the blazing white vortex, his eyes trembled and his face froze for a moment. A forbidden astral soul. He didn't see wrongly. That blazing white vortex was an astral soul, and a forbidden astral soul at that. He could clearly sense the unique astral chi contained within the forbidden astral soul. Not only that, this astral soul was even stronger than the black tortoise astral souls and the azure dragon astral souls he had encountered before. It wasn't any weaker than the black-yellow astral soul, the earthen extermination astral soul. What is this? Ancestor Wu Ming was stunned when he heard Nie Tian's words. He didn't expect that Nie Tian would recognize this thing. Chapter 3784. Chapter 3779. Chapter 3779 7-Colored Dragon Centipede, Human Murder? Old Ancestor Wu Ming couldn't help frowning when he heard Nie Tian's words. He knew nothing about star souls and had no idea what Nie Tian was talking about. An instant later, Nie Tian calmed himself down. Staring at the blazing white vortex in front of him, his eyes were still trembling as he spoke. This is a man-killing astral soul, an extremely powerful force. He had no way to explain the star soul to Forefather Wu Ming, so he could only give a simple explanation. Why is this human killer Xing Hun here? Old Ancestor Wu Ming did not ask anything else and said with a dark expression, "I don't know either." Nie Tian shook his head. He had the same doubts in his heart. A forbidden astral soul wasn't something ordinary. It was impossible for it to appear for no reason. The most probable conjecture was that someone had just been here and had left behind a mortal-killing astral soul. Why would that person leave the human slaughter astral soul here? Nie Tian frowned and couldn't help but feel puzzled in his heart. After which, he suddenly thought of something and his eyes trembled as he exclaimed in his heart, "That person wants me to use the mortal killer astral soul to revive the netherworld dragon physique. That must be it." Nie Tian's eyes burned with passion. The more he thought about it, the more he felt it was possible. A taboo astral soul was a type of extremely powerful energy that had the ability to revive the dead. Back then, the boundless, desolate ghost had been on the verge of death. Nie Tian had used his Azure Dragon astral soul to save him, and he had become the Azure Dragon Star Venerate. The person who left behind the human death astral soul was evidently extremely knowledgeable about the forbidden astral souls. He intentionally left behind the human death astral soul, wanting Nie Tian to use it to revive his netherworld dragon physique. Actually, Nie Tian had also thought of using a taboo astral soul to save the body of the netherworld dragon. Not only that, he already had 2 taboo astral souls, the Earth Extermination astral soul and the Black Tortoise astral soul. However, he secretly sensed the aura of the nether dragon's body. The latter seemed to have some sort of rejection towards star souls. Not only that, the most crucial point was that the netherworld dragon physique had been sealed for far too long. The draconic chi and draconic soul were completely independent of each other. It was basically impossible for him to fuse with a forbidden astral soul. Precisely because of this, Nie Tian didn't use his forbidden astral soul. At this moment, although there was one more person to kill Xinghun, it did not solve the fundamental problem. If he wanted to save the nether dragon's body, he needed a force to first break the seal on his body, and then slowly awaken his dragon chi and dragon soul. Only then could he use the power of the forbidden star soul to completely revive him. "Kid, can this power save Qi?" At this moment, old ancestor Wu Ming seemed to have understood something. He looked at Nie Tian with trembling eyes and asked solemnly. Nie Tian furrowed his brows. He pondered for a moment before explaining the current situation. "In the end," he said, "if we can't awaken Chi's dragon soul, even a forbidden astral soul wouldn't be able to save him. That sealing power was left behind by me in the past." Ancestor Wu Ming's expression darkened after hearing Nie Tian's words. He said, "But unfortunately, my strength has declined too much. It's impossible for me to undo this seal." Nie Tian went blank for a moment, his face filled with astonishment. The seal was left behind by old ancestor Wu Ming, but he couldn't undo it now. It seemed that old ancestor Wu Ming was very strong in the past. But now, his strength had declined and he couldn't undo the seal. At this moment, old ancestor Wu Ming seemed to have sensed something. He suddenly exclaimed and looked up into the sky. Nie Tian also sensed a fluctuation of aura, and his expression changed. Boom! At this moment the void trembled slightly. Then, a 7-colored light descended and hung above the valley. "This is..." Old ancestor Wu Ming's expression changed when he saw the 7-colored light. His eyes trembled and he couldn't say a word. Nie Tian looked at the 7-colored light. He could see that it was a strange plant that was glowing with 7-colored light. It was in the shape of a dragon and had 7 leaves that flickered with 7 different colors. He had seen many treasures in the past, but this was the first time he had seen such a strange flower. He was even more shocked when he sensed the aura fluctuation from the flower. It was hard to imagine that there was such a terrifying thing in the world. This is... Old ancestor Wu Ming finally reacted. He said with a trembling voice, 7-colored dragon centipede. 7-colored dragon centipede? Nie Tian couldn't help but frown when he saw old ancestor Wu Ming's agitation. The seven-colored dragon centipede must be something extraordinary to make an expert like old ancestor Wu Ming react like this. It really is the seven-colored dragon centipede. At this moment, Fat Cat's voice rang out. Her eyes were blazing as she chuckled. So the legendary seven-colored dragon centipede really exists. Fat, what's a seven-colored dragon centipede? Nia Tian frowned and asked Fat Cat. Seven-colored dragon centipede is one of the 3 sacred herbs of the dragon race. Rumor has it that it can bring the dead back to life. Fat Cat took a deep breath and calmed down. Then, she said, however, this herb went extinct a long time ago. I didn't expect it to appear here. Bring the dead back to life? Nia Tian frowned and asked doubtfully, is there really something in the world that can bring the dead back to life? Bringing the dead back to life is just an exaggeration. However, the seven-colored dragon centipede has enough dragon chi and dragon soul to revive the abyss dragon physique. Fat Cat chuckled and said, Nia Tian, it looks like someone has already arranged everything for you. That person chose the abyss dragon physique for you. That person chose the abyss dragon physique for you. After hearing Fat Cat's reminder, Nia Tian's gaze sank, and his expression changed. No matter how stupid he was, he should have reacted by now. It looked like the person behind the scenes had already arranged everything in secret. He didn't have to worry at all. The seven-colored dragon centipede revived the abyss dragon physique's dragon chi and dragon soul. The abyss dragon physique's human-killing star soul would help the abyss dragon physique overcome the tribulation of humanization, allowing it to become a mortal-killing star sovereign. Everything had been arranged. The person behind this should be a cosmic emissary or a star sovereign. A hint of a smile appeared at the corner of Nia Tian's mouth as he muttered, It seems that I didn't put you in a spot just now. Kid, the seven-colored dragon centipede's power is enough to revive Chia's dragon chi and dragon soul. Old ancestor Wu Ming also understood at this time. He looked at Nia Tian with a fiery gaze and said, As long as Chia's dragon chi and dragon soul are revived, you can save him? Yes. Nia Tian nodded firmly with a resolute gaze. Good. Old ancestor Wu Ming was pleasantly surprised. He waved his hand and brought the seven-colored dragon centipede over. Then, he walked into the cave. His expression was somewhat gloomy, and his heart was cold. He said, Old thing, don't think that you can repay your debt to the seven-fiend abyssal dragon tribe just because you saved Chia. You will never be able to repay what you owe the seven-fiend abyssal dragon tribe. Chapter 3785. The enemy of clan extermination. Old ancestor Wu Ming and Nia Tian entered the stone room and started to save the abyss dragon's body. One day later, the two of them walked out of the stone room. Old ancestor Wu Ming's eyes were filled with joy and excitement. After one day, the abyss dragon's body had absorbed the seven-colored dragon centipede and successfully merged with the seven slaughter star soul. His aura had recovered, but it was still somewhat weak. After a few more days, the abyss dragon's body would wake up. After hundreds of thousands of years of guarding, there were finally results. How could old ancestor Wu Ming not be excited? Nia Tian, many thanks. Old ancestor Wu Ming suppressed the joy in his heart and bowed to Nia Tian, thanking him sincerely. Senior, you are too kind. Nia Tian quickly helped old ancestor Wu Ming up and smiled faintly. After all, old ancestor Wu Ming had saved him first. Xiao Chen was just repaying the favor. Furthermore, saving the abyss dragon's body was a great benefit to Xiao Chen. He had gained a strong star venerate. Nia Tian, what did you mean when you said that Chia would become a man-killing star venerate after he wakes up? Old ancestor Wu Ming asked with a frown as he looked at Nia Tian. Before Nia Tian saved the abyss dragon's body, he had told old ancestor Wu Ming about the man-killing star venerate. However, old ancestor Wu Ming had been focused on saving Xian Chia, so he had not listened. At that time, old ancestor Wu Ming only wanted Xian Chia to live. It did not matter whether he was a star venerate or not. However, now that Xianxia was safe, old ancestor Wu Ming had to think about what a star venerate meant to Xianxia. Nie Tian frowned. He had already guessed what old ancestor Wu Ming was thinking. However, he did not expose him. Instead, he carefully explained the meaning of a star venerate and the responsibilities that a star venerate had to bear. In that case, Chia will become your subordinate in the future and listen to you for the rest of his life, right? When Ancestor Wu Ming heard Nie Tian's words, he couldn't help frowning his brows and said in a cold tone, Senior, although the Star Lord and the Star Sky Sacred Leader have a close relationship, it is not a master-servant relationship. Nie Tian's expression also sank as he said, Moreover, I didn't save Xianxia to help him become a Star Monarch. He has no obligation to obey me. When he wakes up, he can do whatever he wants, and I will not interfere. As for his identity as a Star Lord, I don't care if he doesn't want to admit it. Nie Tian felt very uncomfortable with the change in old ancestor Wu Ming's attitude. He was very annoyed. As the Star Holy Lord, he naturally wanted a Star Lord with the Nether Dragon body. However, if the latter was unwilling, he would not force it. There were some things that couldn't be forced. Doesn't matter? Ancestor Wu Ming sneered and said with a dark expression, Perhaps you really don't care, but do you think the person behind you doesn't care? Didn't he set up such a big trap to enslave the last member of the seven-fiend abyssal dragon lineage? While saying that, old ancestor Wu Ming's expression darkened. His eyes exuded a cold aura and a faint murderous intent. The person behind me? Nie Tian was stunned and his expression sank. It seemed that old ancestor Wu Ming had some misunderstanding about him. The person who asked me to save you and told me that you could save Xianxia. Old ancestor Wu Ming looked at Nie Tian and smiled cold. Are you trying to tell me that you don't know who he is? Nie Tian couldn't help frowning even more when he sensed the anger in old ancestor Wu Ming's eyes. It turned out that old ancestor Wu Ming thought that everything that happened to Xianxia was a premeditated trap. The person who set it up was the person hiding in the shadows. Indeed, based on the current situation, it was that person who had planned and controlled everything in the dark. However, Nie Tian didn't think that this was a trap. After all, Xianxia had recovered from his slumber. However, old ancestor Wu Ming could not accept the fact that Xianxia had become a star venerate. Senior, I really don't know who the person secretly helping me is, Nie Tian said after a pause, looking at old ancestor Wu Ming with a sullen gaze. Xiao Chun spoke the truth. He indeed did not know who was helping him. However, since that person could take out the mortal-killing star soul, it meant that he was likely a star venerate or an envoy of the starry heavens. You don't know? Old ancestor Wu Ming smiled coldly. Could it be that he is not related to you at all? If he doesn't know you, why would he help you? That fellow is not someone who helps others for no reason. That person might be related to me, but I really don't know him. Nie Tian frowned and said coldly, Senior Wu Ming, I don't know what grudges you have with that senior, but I just want to help Xianxia. If he is not willing to accept the status of a star venerate, I will not force him. Old ancestor Wu Ming's eyes trembled slightly as he stared at Nie Tian with a fiery gaze. After a long time, he said, That person is the enemy of my seven-fiend abyssal dragon bloodline. If not for him, my seven-fiend abyssal dragon bloodline would not have fallen to such a state. Nie Tian frowned in shock. It turned out that the person behind that person had a grudge with old ancestor Wu Ming. No wonder old ancestor Wu Ming suspected that everything before him was a trap. Nie Tian, this old ancestor believes that you are an upright person. After a while, old ancestor Wu Ming calmed down and said seriously, Furthermore, you did save Chia's life. According to the agreement between this old ancestor and that person, this old ancestor will do 3 things for you. Nie Tian looked at old ancestor Wu Ming, and his eyes flickered involuntarily. Old ancestor Wu Ming could still abide by the agreement under such circumstances. This showed that he was indeed a trustworthy person. Then, Nie Tian knitted his brows and pondered in his heart. However, at this moment, Patriarch 5 Nether suddenly looked at Nie Tian and said with a grim look in his eyes, Nie Tian, you don't look well.
Do I?
Nie Tian's expression changed. He tried to sense the aura within his martial body. Then, his expression changed. His body trembled inexplicably, and he vomited a mouthful of blood. When the blood landed on the ground, it turned black and carried an extremely dark aura.
You're poisoned?
Old ancestor Wu Ming exclaimed. Nie Tian vomited blood. It was a clear sign that he was poisoned. Divine Demon Inverse Rune. Nie Tian looked at the blood on the ground and exclaimed in his heart. He naturally knew that he wasn't poisoned. It was just that his martial body could no longer suppress the Divine Demon Inverse Rune. During the battle with the All-Evil Saint, Nie Tian used the Divine Demon Inverse Rune, causing it to go out of control. Even though the Divine Demon Inverse Rune was suppressed by the All-Evil Heart, it was only temporarily stabilized. Before the All-Evil Heart left, it told Nie Tian that the Divine Demon Inverse Rune could only be suppressed for a few days. If Nie Tian couldn't break through within a few days, he could only wait for death. Chapter 3786. Chapter 3781. Heavenly Nine. Nie Tian took a deep breath and forcefully operated his Yuan Meridian to suppress the Divine Demon inscription. After a while, his complexion improved a little. The Divine Demon inscription was temporarily suppressed. However, he knew that this was only the first time the Divine Demon inscription acted up. It would continue to act up, and it would be more terrifying each time. The most effective way to suppress the Divine Demon inscription was to improve the martial body. And the most direct way to improve the martial body was to break through. Just as Evil Heart said, Nie Tian had to break through within a few days. Otherwise, he would definitely die. Nie Tian, the power in your body is so dark. At this moment, Patriarch 5 Nether seemed to have discovered something. The look in his eyes changed as he looked at Nie Tian. His face went blank for a moment as he exclaimed in horror. He had never felt such a dark power in his millions of years of life. The aura was like an endless dark abyss that could devour one's divine soul in an instant. He did not expect that there was such a dark power in Nie Tian's body. Senior, the first thing I want you to do for me is to protect me secretly and help me get the power of the 5 calamities. Nie Tian smiled bitterly and did not explain anything. The power of the 5 calamities. Old ancestor Wu Ming's eyes trembled when he heard Nie Tian's words. He said in surprise, "You're also here for the power of the 5 calamities?" "Yes." Nie Tian nodded and did not hide anything. "Are you also a legendary heart of heaven and earth martial artist?" Old ancestor Wu Ming's eyes flickered and he was even more surprised. "Yes." Nie Tian nodded again and smiled. He did not expect old ancestor Wu Ming to know about the heart of heaven and earth. He asked, "Senior, how much do you know about the 9 hearts of heaven and earth?" Few people who were not heart of heaven and earth martial artists truly knew about the 9 hearts of heaven and earth. Even if they knew about it, they would only hear about it. "I don't know much about it. I've only heard a little about it." Old ancestor Wu Ming frowned and said, "According to the legend, the 9 hearts of heaven and earth is a power that came from the beginning of the world. When the 9 hearts of heaven and earth first appeared, it caused countless martial artists to fight over it. Back then, the various forces of the all-heaven sacred world even fought over the 9 cores of the world. In the end, the 9 strongest powers at that time obtained the 9 hearts of heaven and earth. These 9 powers were known as the Heaven and Earth 9 Alliances. The 9 alliances of heaven and earth have agreed to coexist peacefully. In the following period of time, the Heaven and Earth Alliance 9 will each focus on the heart of the world in their hands, hoping to obtain great power from it. But the strange thing is that not only did these 9 great powers not rise because of the core of the universe, they instead decline day by day. By now, most of the 9 alliances of heaven and earth have been reduced to high rank or even mid-rank sacred worlds. Some of them have even been destroyed. The 9 alliances of heaven and earth will no longer regain their former glory. At this point, old ancestor Wu Ming could not help but sigh in pity. Why is it like this? Nie Tian frowned with a puzzled expression. Logically speaking, the 9 alliances of heaven and earth should be stronger than before after obtaining the 9 hearts of heaven and earth. At the very least, they should be able to maintain their original status. Why is it declining? It's said that after the 9 alliances of heaven and earth obtained the 9 hearts of heaven and earth, they spent a lot of resources and money to find someone who could fuse with the heart of heaven and earth. However, the result was not satisfactory. Old ancestor Wu Ming frowned and said, "The heart of heaven and earth is a sacred item of the world. It's not something that ordinary people can fuse with. Even for a peak force like the 9 alliances of heaven and earth, it's extremely difficult to find someone who can fuse with the 9 hearts of heaven and earth. And even if they find such a person, some accidents will happen after they fuse with the heart of heaven and earth." It's said that the 9 hearts of heaven and earth are the power of the world. For a cultivator to fuse with the heart of heaven and earth is a blasphemy to the world. So, the 9 alliances of heaven and earth were punished for blaspheming the world and fell from their peak position. Old ancestor Wu Ming shook his head and smiled bitterly. Clearly, he did not believe such a ridiculous saying. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched and he smiled as well. He did not believe that fusing with the heart of heaven and earth was a blasphemy to the world. The existence of the power of the world was reasonable. Since the 9 hearts of heaven and earth appeared, it meant that cultivators could fuse with them. No matter what, the decline of the 9 alliances of heaven and earth is an indisputable fact. Old ancestor Wu Ming sighed and continued, "Because of this, cultivators in the future are no longer so passionate about the heart of heaven and earth. Even now, there are very few people who have heard of the heart of heaven and earth, much less those who understand it." I see. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and he could not help but nod. He had found it strange before. The people of the all-heaven sacred world did not seem to be too passionate about the 9 hearts of heaven and earth. He did not see any major forces fighting over it. So there was such an old story behind the 9 hearts of heaven and earth. Senior, do you know which forces the 9 alliances of heaven and earth were? Nie Tian calmed down and asked curiously. I don't know. Old ancestor Wu Ming shook his head and smiled. It's something that happened a long time ago. I've only heard about it. Nie Tian nodded and fell silent for a while. He guessed that the ancient Ming race where the Onyx Emperor was, the 5 major forces behind the heart of the sky, and the saint son of all evil sky of all evil should have been part of the 9 alliances of heaven and earth. After the decline of these forces, their status in the all-heaven sacred world was clearly not as important as before. Nie Tian, you came for the power of the 5 tribulations. Do you know what the power of the 5 tribulations means to the heart of heaven and earth? Old ancestor Wu Ming's eyes suddenly flickered and he asked Nie Tian. I don't know. Nie Tian shook his head with a hint of excitement in his eyes. He had only followed the instructions left behind by the former master of the sky and came to the 5 underworld sacred world by accident, just in time for the opening of the power of the 5 tribulations. As for what the power of the 5 tribulations was, he really did not know. But judging from old ancestor Wu Ming's expression, he clearly had a certain understanding of the power of the 5 tribulations. Nie Tian, do you know about the heaven and earth seal? Old ancestor Wu Ming frowned and did not directly answer Nie Tian. The heaven and earth seal. Nie Tian's eyes trembled when he heard this name. He remembered that the saint son of all evil had mentioned the heaven and earth seal when he was fighting with him. The saint son of all evil said that Nye Tian's sky sword had not unsealed the heaven and earth seal, so it was impossible for it to fight against his death scythe. Nye Tian was puzzled at that time. What was the heaven and earth seal, and why was it so important to the sky sword? How could he not be surprised when old ancestor Wu Ming mentioned the heaven and earth seal again? Chapter 3787. Mark of the Ancestral Dragon, Unsealing the Seal of Heaven and Earth with the Power of the Five Tribulations? Nye Tian couldn't help being surprised when he heard Patriarch Wu Nether's words. He didn't know what the world seal was, but he understood from Saint Sun All-Evil's words that it was extremely important to the sky sword. The reason why Saint Sun All-Evil's death scythe was stronger than the sky sword was because it had unsealed a world seal. The sky sword had a natural suppression over the death scythe. If it could unseal the world seal, it would be much more powerful than the death scythe. Nye Tian, it looks like you know nothing about the world seal. Ancestor Wu Ming couldn't help but laugh at Nye Tian's reaction. Actually, it's not strange. It's probably just a coincidence that you can fuse with the world core. Nye Tian's lips twitched and he nodded with a bitter smile. It was indeed an accident that he could fuse with the Sky Heart. He only entered the Sky Sword Martial to save his father, Nye Fenghua, and fused with the Sky Heart by chance. The major factions behind the Sky Heart didn't hesitate to establish the Sky Sword Martial in their realms in order to find someone who could fuse with the Sky Heart. It was indeed a shocking move. No wonder the Heaven and Earth Alliance spent so much effort to find a heart of the world martial artist. Cultivators in the sacred world were stronger than those in realms and planar world. However, fusing with the world core didn't rely on strength. It relied more on talent and perseverance. Therefore, if one couldn't find a heart of the world martial artist in the sacred world, they could only search in realms. Nye Tian, your world core should have nurtured something like a weapon or something else. Ancestor Wu Ming looked at Nye Tian with a frown. Yes. Nye Tian nodded and the sky sword appeared with a flip of his palm. The sword intent was extremely sharp. My world core is called the Sky Heart. This sword is called the Sky Sword. It was born from the Sky Heart. The chi of heaven and earth is dense. It is indeed a good sword. Old ancestor Wu Ming looked at the sword in the sky, and his eyes uncontrollably flickered with passion. He said, "It looks like the rumors are true. Every world's core will give birth to an origin weapon." An origin weapon? Nye Tian's eyes trembled as he looked at the sky sword with excitement. As it turned out, the sky sword was the source of the heart of the sky, just like the Bodhi bead was the source of the Buddha Bodhi heart. From this, it could be seen that the Heaven-Punishing Gate was the Heaven-Punishing Demon Heart's origin weapon, the Blood-Soul Road was the Three Souls Profound Heart's origin weapon, and the Death God Scythe was the 10,000 Evil Heart's origin weapon. Every source artifact born from a heart of the world was different, but they could all be considered the weapons of a heart of the world martial artist. Furthermore, an origin weapon was clearly not something an ordinary weapon could compare to. Its might was probably even more terrifying than a rank 9 sacred weapon. Because the heart of the world's origin weapon is too powerful, it was born with 9 heaven and earth seals to suppress the power of the origin weapon. At this moment, old ancestor Wu Ming continued, "Every time a seal of the heaven and earth seal is unsealed, it will release a lot of power. Therefore, every time a seal of the heaven and earth seal is unsealed, there will be a qualitative leap in power. So that's how it is. No wonder the 10,000 evil saints' death god scythe is so terrifying." Nye Tian's eyes narrowed as he understood. At this moment, he also understood why so many heart of the world martial artists appeared at the same time. It turned out that the power of the 5 tribulations was used to unseal the heaven and earth seals. The power of the 5 tribulations is only a kind of power for ordinary martial artists to increase their strength. However, for heart of the world martial artists it is a qualitative leap. Old ancestor Wu Ming laughed and said, Nye Tian, I will naturally help you if you want to obtain the power of the 5 tribulations. However, whether you can obtain it or not will depend on yourself. I understand. Nye Tian smiled and said, Senior, you only need to guarantee that I won't be threatened by those experts. Sure. Old Ancestor Wu Ming smiled and nodded. His eyes flickered as he looked at Nye Tian and said, Nye Tian, your 9 Yuan meridians should have been formed by absorbing 2 special dragon veins, right? Yes. Nye Tian nodded and said with a smile, I obtained 2 types of dragon veins by chance. Previously, he thought that the Supreme Dragon Vein formed from the fusion of the 5 Yang Dragon Vein and the 9 Star Dragon Vein was the strongest dragon vein in the world. However, after seeing a true Sage Realm Dragon Clan member, he realized that the Dragon Clan in this realm was only a subspecies derived from the Sage Realm Dragon Clan. Therefore, his 9 dragon veins weren't the strongest. At most, they would be on par with an ordinary Dragon Clan member. They couldn't be compared to Xianqia's nether dragon physique. Old Ancestor Wu Ming looked at Nye Tian and said with a smile, If I can help you improve your dragon vein, it should be very helpful to your martial physique, right? Oh, of course. Nye Tian was startled at first and thought that he had misheard. However, he quickly reacted and his voice trembled with excitement. The origin of a cultivator's strength came from their Yuan meridians. Thus, the Yuan meridians were the foundation of a cultivator's martial Tao. If old ancestor Wu Ming could improve Nye Tian's Yuan meridians, it would definitely be a qualitative improvement for him. Don't be too excited. Let me check your dragon vein first. Old ancestor Wu Ming smiled. His divine sense entered Nye Tian's body and his expression slightly changed. In the end, his eyes were filled with unconcealable joy. In the end, old ancestor Wu Ming was dumbfounded. His lips trembled as if he was trying to say something, but no sound came out. Senior, how is it? Nye Tian couldn't help but become even more excited when he saw old ancestor Wu Ming's reaction. The mark of the ancestral dragon. It's actually the mark of the ancestral dragon. Old ancestor Wu Ming finally reacted. His eyes flickered with fanaticism and shock. He stared at Nye Tian and said, Your dragon vein actually has the mark of the ancestral dragon. The mark of the ancestral dragon? Nye Tian looked at old ancestor Wu Ming in astonishment. He had no idea what the latter was talking about. However, judging from old ancestor Wu Ming's reaction, it seemed that the mark of the ancestral dragon was something extraordinary. Old ancestor Wu Ming calmed down after a long time. He stared at Nye Tian and said, Nye Tian, your dragon vein might not be strong, but there is the mark of the ancestral dragon on it. Senior, what are the mark of the ancestral dragon? Nye Tian asked with a frown. The mark of the ancestral dragon is a sign of atavism or a manifestation of the dragon vein's talent. Old ancestor Wu Ming couldn't contain his excitement and said, Do you know why Chia has the nether dragon physique? It's because there are the nether dragon's marks in his dragon vein. 9 of them. Nye Tian frowned, but his eyes flickered with a fiery light. He carefully asked, Then how many mark of the ancestral dragon are there on my dragon vein? Chapter 3788. Chapter 3783. The 4 Great Ancestral Dragons, 9. Nye Tian's eyes were burning with astonishment. He did not expect his dragon vein to have 9 ancestral dragons' marks as well. Xianqia had the authentic abyssal dragon physique, one of the 4 great ancestral dragon bloodlines, the 7-fiend abyssal dragon bloodline. Since Nye Tian also had 9 ancestral dragon marks like Xianqia, did this mean that his dragon vein was not weaker than Xianqia's? Senior, is 9 ancestral dragon marks a lot or a little? Nye Tian became cold after a while and asked Forefather Wu Ming nervously. Forefather Wu Ming was also excited at this moment. He took a deep breath and said, Sage Realm Dragon Clan clansmen have ancestral dragon marks in their dragon veins. Most of the cultivators who possess ancestral dragon scars have less than 3. Only a rare few can possess more than 3 ancestral dragon scars. Those from the dragon clan who possess more than 7 ancestral dragon marks are all geniuses who dominate the world. As for those who have 9 ancestral dragon marks, they have a special title, the Ancestral Dragon God. In the history of the dragon clan, the number of people who have 9 ancestral dragon marks can be counted on one hand. These people are publicly acknowledged as dragon monarchs, dragon emperors, or war gods of the dragon clan. When they were alive, they must have been peak experts that shocked the world. Forefather Wu Ming's eyes trembled at this point. I really didn't expect that there would be a second person who has 9 ancestral dragon marks other than Xianqie. Furthermore, this person is not from the dragon clan. This is too inconceivable. His current feelings were not as simple as that. When he sensed the ancestral dragon marks in Nie Tian's body, he even thought that it was an illusion. He was convinced and convinced again and again before he concluded that there were indeed ancestral dragon marks on Nie Tian's dragon vein. However, he still didn't understand how an ordinary person who had a dragon vein by accident could have 9 ancestral dragon marks. What happened to Nie Tian was simply too strange, and he found it hard to believe. Nie Tian was also very excited at this moment. He took several deep breaths and forced himself to calm down before asking, "Senior, earlier, you said that Chia's ancestral dragon's mark is the mark of the Nether Dragon. Then what is my mark?" Although he didn't know much about the ancestral Dragon, he still knew some things from the conversation between old ancestor Wu Ming and Fat Cat. There were 4 types of ancestral dragon bloodline, so there should also be 4 types of ancestral dragon scars. Xianqia's mark of the ancestral dragon was the mark of the Nether Dragon, one of the 4 ancestral dragons. Nie Tian was very curious about what the other 3 ancestral dragons were and what his ancestral dragon's mark was. Upon hearing Nie Tian's question, the look in Patriarch 5 Nether's eyes flickered. After a moment of silence, he said, "Nie Tian, there's something strange about your ancestral dragon scar. It seems to be a fusion of 2 kinds of ancestral dragon's marks, and not a single ancestral dragon's mark." Nie Tian was surprised and couldn't help but ask, "Could it be that my mark of the ancestral dragon is a fusion of 2 ancestral dragon's marks?" "That should be the case." Ancestor Wu Ming nodded. "According to this ancestor's observation, your mark of the ancestral dragon should be a fusion of the Candle Dragon's mark and the Ing Dragon's mark. This is also why I find it strange. I have never seen 2 ancestral dragons' marks fused together like this." "The Candle Dragon's mark? The Ing Dragon's mark?" Nie Tian's brows furrowed in astonishment. He had no idea what these 2 ancestral dragons' marks were or what they meant. Ancestor Wu Ming saw through Nie Tian's confusion and smiled faintly. "The 4 ancestral dragons are the 9 Een Candle Dragon, the 7 Fiend Abyssal Dragon, the Pentason Dragon, and the Grand Shaman Frozen End. The 4 ancestral dragons correspond to the 4 ancestral dragons' marks. The Candle Dragon's mark, the Nether Dragon's mark, the Ing Dragon's mark, and the Frozen End's mark. The ancestral dragon's mark on your dragon vein contains the aura of both the Candle Dragon's mark and the Ing Dragon's mark. It should be a fusion of these 2 ancestral dragons' marks." After saying that, old ancestor Wu Ming nodded, as if confirming his guess. Upon hearing Patriarch Wu Nether's words, Nie Tian couldn't help but frown as he racked his brain. 9 Een Illuminating Dragon and 5 Yang Rain Dragon. His Supreme Dragon Vein was a fusion of the 9-star Dragon Vein and the Pentason Dragon Vein. His mark of the ancestral dragon corresponded to the 9 Een Candle Dragon and the Pentason Dragon. The 9-star Dragon Vein and the 9 Een Candle Dragon, and the Pentason Dragon Vein and the Pentason Dragon Vein seemed to correspond to each other. Could there be a connection between them? Nie Tian, what are you thinking about? Ancestor Wuming frowned after seeing Nye Tian's strange expression. Nye Tian narrowed his eyes and told Patriarch Wu Nether about his speculation. After hearing it, Patriarch Wu Nether looked a bit hesitant and said, "Perhaps there is some kind of connection between your dragon bloodline and the two kinds of ancestral dragons. I'm not familiar with the lesser dragons in this realm, so I can't be sure." "Yes." Nye Tian nodded and didn't say anything else. It wasn't important whether his dragon vein was related to the two ancestral dragons or not. The most important thing right now was that he possessed an abnormally powerful dragon vein. The special ancestral dragon's mark formed from the fusion of two ancestral dragon's marks should be even stronger than Xianqia's nether dragon's mark. After Nye Tian calmed down, he looked at Patriarch Wu Ming and asked, "Senior, do you have a way to improve my dragon vein?" Ancestor Wu Ming smiled and suddenly asked, "Nye Tian, your dragon vein has the ancestral dragon's mark and isn't any weaker than other dragon veins. Do you know why your dragon vein's power is weaker than ordinary dragon veins? Is it because of the ancestral dragon's mark?" Nye Tian furrowed his brows and guessed. "Does the ancestral dragon's mark require a special method to activate its power?" "Yes." Ancestor Wu Ming nodded. "The ancestral dragon's mark is attached to the dragon vein and is in a dormant state in the beginning. Only after awakening will it reveal its great power. None of your 9 marks have awakened, which is why your dragon vein is so weak. Senior, do you have a way to awaken the ancestral dragon's mark?" Nye Tian's eyes shone with excitement when he heard Patriarch Wu Nether's words. "Of course." Ancestor Wu Ming smiled. "I am a member of the 7-fiend abyssal dragon bloodline, so I naturally have a way to awaken the ancestral dragon's mark. Help me awaken it." Nye Tian's eyes trembled with nervousness as his palms became sweaty. Ancestor Wu Ming nodded with a smile. "I will help you awaken it now. However, this process isn't easy, so you have to endure it." "Okay." Nye Tian nodded and sat down cross-legged with his eyes closed. The 9 dragon veins slowly circulated and entered a state of cultivation. Ancestor Wu Ming nodded and murmured, "My nether dragon energy should be able to help you awaken at least 2 of the ancestral dragon's marks." Having said that, he opened his palm and unleashed the draconic energy in his body. It condensed into a draconic vortex that became denser and denser. Chapter 3789. Boom! The moment the dragon energy entered his body, Nye Tian felt a powerful force rushing in. It was as if a wild beast had suddenly appeared and attacked his martial physique, causing him to almost explode. That terrifying power was simply too powerful. It was incomparably turbulent, like a huge tidal wave, roaring in Nye Tian's martial body. Arg! The intense pain caused Nye Tian to let out an agonized howl. His facial features twisted and distorted, making him look extremely sinister and terrifying. He didn't expect Ancestor Wu Ming's dragon energy to be so terrifying. That kind of impact could almost destroy everything and tear apart his martial physique and divine soul. Ancestor Wu Ming was an expert of the 7-fiend abyssal dragon bloodline. The dragon vein in his body was the 7-fiend abyssal dragon bloodline. Moreover, he was also a member of the dragon clan with the nether dragon mark. However, he only had 5 nether dragon marks. He couldn't be compared to Xianqia, who had 9 nether dragon marks. Even so, the strength of his dragon energy was already shocking. In the present age, there were only a few people with a stronger dragon energy than Ancestor Wu Ming. Although Nye Tian had a special ancestral dragon mark, it hadn't awakened yet. Therefore, his dragon energy wasn't strong. It was natural for him to be shaken by such a powerful dragon energy. "Nye Tian, hold on," Ancestor Wu Ming said after hearing Nye Tian's miserable howl. He was worried that Nye Tian couldn't bear it. Nye Tian groaned and no longer made a sound. He had experienced pain that was even more terrifying than what he was experiencing now. He could withstand pain that ordinary people couldn't imagine. Ancestor Wuming secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Nye Tian became cold. He began to slowly infuse dragon energy to awaken the ancestral dragon mark. The most direct and effective way to awaken the ancestral dragon mark was to stimulate it with powerful dragon energy. Patriarch 5 Nether was confident that, given the strength of his dragon chi, Nye Tian would be able to awaken 2 of the ancestral dragon's marks, or even more. At this moment, as the nether dragon aura surged into Nye Tian's body, he felt the 9 dragon veins start to absorb the nether dragon aura like dried-up land. As the nether dragon energy was absorbed by the dragon veins, Nye Tian felt like the 9 dragon veins in his body were about to explode. It was as if they were filled with a raging power and were about to explode in the next moment. This kind of feeling was almost unbearable, but it also gave him a feeling that his strength had become stronger. It was indescribably strange. What followed was a long period of peace. Old Ancestor Wu Ming continued to release the nether dragon energy. After a long time, beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His face was slightly pale and ugly. This was a sign that he had consumed too much dragon energy. He was very confused, because he could sense that Nye Tian's scar of the ancestral dragon still showed no signs of awakening. How is this possible? Ancestor Wuming couldn't help panicking. Why hasn't his mark of the ancestral dragon awakened yet? Could it be that my dragon energy is too weak? The awakening of the mark of the ancestral dragon required a huge amount of dragon energy. The stronger the mark of the ancestral dragon, the stronger the dragon energy required. With old Ancestor Wuming's dragon energy, he should be able to awaken any mark of the ancestral dragon easily. However, Nye Tian's mark of the ancestral dragon was extremely strange. It still showed no signs of awakening after absorbing the nether dragon energy. Old Ancestor Wuming could sense that Nye Tian's dragon veins were still absorbing the dragon energy like a black hole. He let out a long breath and continued to release the nether dragon energy. At this point, he had to persevere. Otherwise, the dragon energy from before would have gone to waste. A few hours passed. Old Ancestor Wuming's face was as pale as paper. He even looked a little skinny. The shock in his heart couldn't be any greater. He had released the maximum amount of dragon energy in his body in one go, but Nye Tian's mark of the ancestral dragon still hadn't awakened. This was way too strange. Old Ancestor Wuming initially thought that he could easily awaken Nye Tian's mark of the ancestral dragon. But now it seemed like he was too optimistic. Or rather, he had underestimated Nye Tian. Nye Tian's mark of the ancestral dragon was way scarier than he had imagined. Another hour passed. Old Ancestor Wuming's face was drained of blood as he panted heavily. He couldn't hold on any longer. If this continued, his dragon energy would be depleted and his dragon veins might even be damaged. Just then, old Ancestor Wuming seemed to have sensed something and exclaimed. His eyes widened and his pale face froze. He finally saw the mark of the ancestral dragon on Nye Tian's dragon veins. Dragon-shaped runes appeared on the 9 dragon veins like some sort of brand that grew brighter and more dazzling. The dragon-shaped runes on the 9 dragon veins connected and formed a complete mark of the ancestral dragon. The mark of the ancestral dragon has finally awakened. Old Ancestor Wuming finally relaxed when he saw the mark of the ancestral dragon. Although Nye Tian had only awakened one mark of the ancestral dragon, old Ancestor Wuming was satisfied. In fact, old Ancestor Wuming was even happier. This was because Nye Tian had only awakened one mark of the ancestral dragon. This meant that his mark of the ancestral dragon was far stronger than ordinary marks of the ancestral dragon. Old Ancestor Wuming took a deep breath. He suddenly felt that it might not be a bad thing for Xianxie to become a star venerate. Boom! At this moment, Nye Tian's body suddenly trembled strangely. Vast dragon energy was released from his body and soared into the sky. The sudden change made old ancestor Wuming's expression change as he exclaimed in shock. Boom! In the next moment, the enormous dragon aura around Nie Tian's body actually condensed into the shape of a dragon in the void. A tremendous aura surged out and spread in all directions. This! Old ancestor Wu Ming was stunned, and he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. He had never expected that such a terrifying phenomenon would occur on Nie Tian's body. Roar! At this moment, the huge dragon shadow let out a deep dragon roar. Then, the dragon energy exploded in the void and violently attacked, forming a ripple of dragon energy in the sky. In the next moment, old ancestor Wuming felt the dragon vein in his body tremble. His body trembled and he spat out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, a shocking image flashed through his mind. In the vast and endless great void universe, a gigantic dragon appeared. It walked slowly in the universe like a peerless king patrolling its own territory. On the head of the huge dragon stood a figure. The face was a little blurry, but the outline looked like a person. Nie Tian. Chapter 3790. Dragon Shepherds! Dragon Shepherds! Old ancestor Wuming uttered the last 3 words word by word. His face was completely stiff as if it was sealed in ice. He never expected Nie Tian to be the legendary dragon shepherds. At the same time, the dragon chi on Nie Tian's body instantly spread out like invisible ripples that rushed in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the dragon chi ripples filled the entire 5 underworld sacred world. Moreover, the ripples did not stop after spreading to the entire 5 underworld sacred world. Instead, they continued to attack and penetrated the barrier between the sacred worlds, spreading to the other sacred world. In an instant, with the 5 underworld sacred world as the center, hundreds of sacred worlds around it were affected and felt the dragon chi ripples at the same time. That kind of boundless aura simply made people's hearts tremble. All the martial artists in the sacred worlds felt the dragon chi ripples at the same time, but they did not know where the ripples came from. As the dragon chi spread out, it was invisible and only the purest flow of energy was visible. However, apart from feeling the dragon chi ripples, all the members of the dragon tribe in the sacred worlds also felt the impact of the dragon veins in their bodies. Moreover, the more powerful the dragon tribe martial artists were, the more impact they felt. Those dragon tribe martial artists, who were sacred emperors or even sacred ancestors, felt the resonance of the dragon veins. The impact of the impact was unimaginable. At that moment, in a mysterious sacred world in the All-Heaven sacred world, one of the 3 great void forbidden grounds of the All-Heaven sacred world, the primordial dragon domain. A figure stood coldly in the void like a strange mountain. As he stood there, the surrounding world seemed minuscule in front of him. His figure did not move, just like an iceberg. Upon closer inspection, the figure was actually sealed in ice. However, at that moment, a faint draconic aura was surging around his body. It was like waves of water, emitting a strange aura, making him seem very mysterious. It was as if he did not exist in the world before him, but stood in another world, or perhaps he himself was a world. The figure did not move, just like an iceberg. After a long time, he finally moved, and the aura around him changed instantly. He seemed to have awakened from the ice. With every movement he made, he caused the wind to rise and the clouds to surge. At this moment, his face slowly became clear. It was a young and handsome face. His facial features were exquisite, as if they had been carved by the best craftsmen. They were perfect to the extreme and flawless. He was dressed in white, and his long hair fluttered in the wind. His heroic spirit and sharp spirit coexisted, and he was the perfect creation of nature. But at this moment there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, and his face was slightly pale, as if he had just experienced a great battle. However, his eyes were clear and sharp, flickering with a strange light. At a certain moment, the corners of his mouth suddenly twitched, forming a faint smile that was both beautiful and cold. Ahem. Suddenly, he coughed twice, and the blood stain on the corner of his mouth became even more obvious. Then, he finally opened his mouth, and there was a hint of sickness in his voice as he muttered with a smile, "I've been sealed in ice here for millions of years. Dragon Shepherd, you've finally appeared." The name Dragon Shepherd had just come out of old ancestor Wu Ming's mouth. He. Then, he spoke again, one of the 3 great legends that existed since the birth of the dragon tribe. "I hope you won't disappoint me." The Dragon Shepherd was one of the 3 great legends of the dragon tribe, and the person who stabilized the world according to the Taishu prophecy. The man in white used the Taishu icicles of the primordial dragon domain to seal himself in ice for millions of years, just for one person to appear. That person was the Dragon Shepherd. After waiting for millions of years, when the Dragon Shepherd Chi reached him, the man in white was finally unsealed. "Since I've woken up, you should wake up too." At that moment, the man in white suddenly grinned coldly and spoke with a deep voice. Then, he raised his hand, and an enormous dragon chi surged out, instantly spreading to the surrounding glaciers. Bang! One of the glaciers that looked like a mountain was triggered by the dragon chi. It shattered into pieces and turned into cold air. Then, a black dragon emerged from the cold air. Bang! Bang! Following that, the other 2 glaciers also shattered, and 2 more black dragons appeared. "Black dragon evils, why aren't you kneeling after seeing me?" At that moment, the man in white spoke loudly. His voice seemed to have a magical power, dispelling the cold air in the air. When the 3 black dragons heard the white-robed man's voice, their figures tumbled in the void and instantly transformed into human forms. They arrived in front of the white-robed man and bowed. "The 3 evils greet Lord D Long, very good." The white-robed man called D Long by the black dragon 3 Banes slightly nodded. He didn't waste any words and directly said, "I woke you all up to find someone for me." "Who?" The 3 evils' eyes trembled slightly, and they asked simultaneously. "Dragon Shepherds," D Long said in a low voice, enunciating each word. "The Dragon Shepherd." The 3 evils' eyes suddenly trembled. They were clearly very shocked. "The Dragon Shepherd has appeared?" D Long nodded slightly. He waved his hand and 3 strange auras entered the 3 evils' bodies. He said, "Carefully sense the auras in your dragon veins. This is the Dragon Shepherd Chi. I don't care where the Dragon Shepherd is. No matter where he is, you must find him for me." "Yes." The 3 evils nodded, not daring to disobey. "Remember, I want him alive." D Long's gaze sank slightly. "Yes." The 3 evils nodded again. "Go." D Long waved his hand and closed his eyes. His entire body was sealed in ice once more, as if he had never woken up. The 3 evils moved at the same time and quickly disappeared into the endless snow. At the same time, in a remote valley in the 5 underworld sacred world, Nie Tian's eyes snapped open, revealing a pair of extremely sharp eyes that shone with blazing light like the blazing sun, giving him a mysterious and holy aura. Ancestor Wu Ming was stunned. When he saw that Nie Tian had woken up, his eyes narrowed. He subconsciously bowed and said in a trembling voice, "Am Lord Mu Long, Lord Mu Long?" Nie Tian frowned when he heard Ancestor Wu Ming's strange address. He smiled and said, "Senior, are you all right? Who's Lord Mu Long?" I'm fine. Ancestor Wu Ming immediately reacted. Although he tried his best to remain calm, his voice was trembling. Nie Tian frowned in confusion. He couldn't understand why Ancestor Wu Ming was so nervous all of a sudden. His attitude towards him seemed to have changed. He seemed to be afraid or even respectful of him. After a long time, old Ancestor Wu Ming finally calmed down. However, his expression wasn't good. Chapter 3791. Legend of the Dragon Clandikarma Ruins. Thinking of this name, old Ancestor Wu Ming's eyes narrowed. Unconcealable fear flashed across his face. As the number 1 taboo of the Dragon Clan, The name Daikarma Ruins made old ancestor Wu Ming shudder inexplicably. Daikarma Ruins was the #1 taboo of the Dragon Clan. Rumor had it that it was the only Dragon Clan martial artist who possessed 10 marks of the ancestral dragon. It was said that at its peak, the Daikarma Ruins' strength had already surpassed the true ancestral dragon. Originally, the appearance of such a terrifying expert should have been the Dragon Clan's fortune. However, after the Daikarma Ruins ascended to the supreme position of the Dragon Clan, its ambition soared. It led the Dragon Clan to annex the other clans, which eventually led to the Ancient World War. After that great battle, the Dragon Clan became weak. Furthermore, the various Dragon Clans fell apart. The Sage State Dragon Clan, which was once powerful, slowly began to decline. Since then, the name Daikarma Ruins became the #1 taboo of the Dragon Clan. No one was allowed to mention it. However, even after tens of millions of years, the Dragon Clan still remembered the name. Old ancestor Wu Ming had never seen the Daikarma Ruins. He only knew of its existence from his seniors. Moreover, he knew that the Daikarma Ruins was not dead. It was frozen in the primordial dragon domain. Rumor had it that the Daikarma Ruins was waiting for a person to appear. That person was the Dragon Shepherd. There was a prophecy that had been passed down in the Dragon Clan for tens of millions of years. When the Daikarma Ruins reawakened, it would mark the end of the entire Dragon Clan. Therefore, when old ancestor Wu Ming confirmed that Nye Tian was the legendary Dragon Shepherd, he was so shocked and terrified. What he was truly afraid of was not the Dragon Shepherd Nye Tian, but the #1 taboo, the Daikarma Ruins. The Dragon Shepherd was also a legendary figure in the Dragon Clan. However, old ancestor Wu Ming did not know much about them. However, he never thought that the legendary Dragon Shepherds were not dragons, but ordinary humans. How could he not be shocked when he saw the Dragon Shepherd standing in front of him? "Senior, you seem to be injured," Nye Tian said with a frown when he saw old ancestor Wu Ming's pale and strange face. "I'm fine. I've just used up too much dragon energy. I'll be fine after some rest." Ancestor Wu Ming forced a smile. Nye Tian frowned. He could tell that old ancestor Wu Ming was hiding something from him, so he didn't ask any further. "Nye Tian, check your body first. This ancestor will go check on Li Chia." Ancestor Wu Ming's eyes slightly trembled. He glanced at Nye Tian, then he quickly went back into the stone room. "What's wrong with Senior Wu Ming?" Nye Tian looked at old ancestor Wu Ming's back in confusion. He could tell that forefather Wu Ming was terrified and even a little flustered, as if he had just experienced something terrifying. But old ancestor 5 Nether was unwilling to say more, so it was inconvenient for him to ask. At this moment, the most important thing to Nye Tian was the power of the 5 tribulations. Then, he took a deep breath and began to look inside his martial body. He was a little nervous at the moment. He was looking forward to how his martial experience would improve after awakening the first mark of the ancestral dragon. The 3rd level of the Heavenly Mandate Realm. The next moment, Nye Tian's face suddenly froze. After a long time, his eyes were full of disbelief. Just by awakening the first mark of the ancestral dragon, his strength had improved by 2 levels, from the 1st level of the Heavenly Mandate Realm to the 3rd level. The Heavenly Mandate Realm was not considered strong in the Saint Realm. It was not too difficult for ordinary warriors to improve. However, Nye Tian had just broken through to the Heavenly Mandate Realm not long ago. Under such circumstances, he could break through 2 levels in a row. It was really terrifying. At this time, Nye Tian really understood how terrifying the mark of the ancestral dragon was. Then, he continued to check the martial body. He clearly felt that the bones, meridians, and flesh of his whole body had improved a lot. At this time, he took a deep breath and had a feeling of an explosion of power. It was as if there was inexhaustible power in his body. Suddenly, Nye Tian seemed to find something. He was surprised. His eyes trembled slightly. He said in horror, "How is this possible?" He suddenly found that the realm of swordsmanship had also improved. It had broken through from the 7th level of swordsmanship to the 9th level of swordsmanship. The awakening of the mark of the ancestral dragon was a qualitative improvement for his dragon vein. The Yuan vein was the foundation of a warrior's martial arts, so it was normal for him to break through the realm of martial arts. But why did his swordsmanship strength break through? Although the swordsmanship and martial arts cultivation of a warrior were somewhat related, they were basically separated. A warrior with a very low martial arts cultivation could sometimes have an extremely high realm of swordsmanship. However, if the martial arts cultivation was low, the warrior's martial body would be weak. Even if they had a strong sword will, they could not fully exert the power. Nie Tian was very surprised. Why did the awakening of the mark of the ancestral dragon improve his swordsmanship realm? The mark of the ancestral dragon directly improves the dragon vein, so your martial arts realm also improved. At this time, the fat cat's voice sounded. It explained, under normal circumstances, the realm of swordsmanship will not improve because of the improvement of martial arts. However, your martial body is different from ordinary people. At this point, the fat cat paused and was a little hesitant. What's different? Nie Tian frowned and could not help but ask. Because you have the raw star stone. Under the effect of the power of the stars, the dragon chi and sword will in your body gradually merged into one. The fat cat paused and continued, the mark of the ancestral dragon improved the dragon chi, which indirectly improved the sword will, which led to a breakthrough in your swordsmanship realm. So that's how it is. Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly as he suddenly understood. Then, he was stunned for a moment and asked, the dragon chi and sword will merged into one. This shouldn't be a bad thing, right? For now, it's not a bad thing. The fat cat hesitated again and said in a deep voice. Nie Tian could hear the hesitation in the fat cat's voice and could not help but be stunned. However, before he could say anything, the fat cat said, "You don't need to think too much now. Focus on what's at hand." Okay. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched and he smiled helplessly. He could only nod. In his opinion, the merging of the powers in his body should be a good thing. Nie Tian, is your martial body okay? At this time, old ancestor Wu Ming walked out of the stone room and looked at Nie Tian in confusion. It's fine. Nie Tian smiled faintly and could not hide the excitement on his face. That's good. Old ancestor Wu Ming was stunned for a moment before he nodded. He was very surprised that Nie Tian did not feel any discomfort at this moment. Nie Tian first absorbed his nether dragon chi and then awakened the mark of the ancestral dragon. Under normal circumstances, there would be a certain rejection when the dragon vein absorbed other dragon chi. Moreover, there would be a period of weakness after the mark of the ancestral dragon was awakened. However, Nie Tian did not show any signs of this at all. Chapter 3792. The evil heart reappears. Senior, are you all right? Nie Tian could not help but ask when he saw Patriarch Wu Ming's strange gaze. I'm fine. Patriarch Wu Ming returned to his senses and smiled awkwardly. He knew that the appearance of the dragon shepherds was definitely shocking news to the entire dragon tribe. He was hesitating if he should inform the other dragon tribes and let them know about the dragon shepherd. After some thought, Patriarch Wu Ming decided not to spread the news about the dragon shepherds for now. On one hand, once the news spread, it would cause a huge commotion to the entire dragon tribe. On the other hand, Patriarch Wu Ming had not left the 5 underworld sacred world for millions of years. He was worried that the current dragon tribe was no longer the dragon tribe that he knew. Finally, he had another doubt. He was worried that the dragon shepherd's appearance might have awakened the greatest taboo, the Daikarma ruins. Once the Daikarma ruins awakened, the first thing it would do was to find the dragon shepherds. Therefore, spreading the news about the dragon shepherds would undoubtedly tell the Daikarma ruins that the dragon shepherds had appeared in the 5 underworld sacred world. Given the Daikarma ruins' capabilities, it would definitely find the dragon shepherds soon. By then, the dragon shepherds would be in danger. Actually, Patriarch Wu Ming did not know much about the dragon shepherd. He only knew that the latter was one of the 3 legends of the dragon tribe. However, he knew that the greatest taboo, the Daikarma ruins, was definitely the greatest threat to the entire dragon tribe. The dragon shepherds were the only beings that could go against the Daikarma ruins. Therefore, he naturally sided with the dragon shepherd. He had already made up his mind. No matter what happened, he would do everything he could to protect Nye Tian. Because Nye Tian represented the future of the entire dragon tribe. Thinking about this, Patriarch Wu Ming looked at Nye Tian with a strange gaze. There was a hint of unconcealable respect in his gaze. Nye Tian was shocked to see Patriarch Wu Ming's expression. Patriarch Wu Ming smiled and said calmly, "Nye Tian, rest for a few days. Once the power of the 5 calamities is activated, I will follow you to the 5 calamities mountain range and help you obtain the power of the 5 calamities." However, there was a resolute determination in his calmness. "Thank you, Senior." Nye Tian bowed slightly to express his gratitude. However, he felt very strange in his heart. He could clearly sense that old ancestor Wu Ming's attitude towards him was different from before. It was as if his weight in Forefather 5 Nether's heart had suddenly increased. Old ancestor Wu Ming no longer treated him as a cooperative partner. Instead, he treated him as someone with a higher status or even as a master. Nye Tian didn't think too much about it. He had just broken through and needed a few days of cultivation to stabilize and familiarize himself with his current realm. For the next few days, Nye Tian cultivated in the valley. Several days later, he emerged from his state of cultivation. The instant he stood up, a fierce aura emanated from him. It was as sharp as the edge of a sword, and it was extremely threatening. "Nye Tian, looks like you've adjusted yourself well." Old ancestor Wu Ming's voice resounded as he walked out of the cave. "Senior, you've recovered pretty well too." Nye Tian smiled and looked at old ancestor Wu Ming. After a few days of rest, old ancestor Wu Ming had also recovered well. His overall strength had mostly recovered. The power of the 5 tribulations will open in a few days. Let's go to the 5 tribulations mountain range now. Old ancestor Wu Ming said with a faint smile. "Will Xian Xie be fine staying here?" Nye Tian frowned and glanced at the cave. Xian Xie was already a celestial monarch human killer. Nye Tian didn't want to see celestial monarch human killer's true appearance before he died. "Don't worry. Xie is very safe here." Old ancestor Wu Ming smiled calmly. The valley in front of them looked ordinary, but it was actually protected by a formation. Furthermore, there was a barrier around the cave and the stone room. Without an opening rune, even a sky martial divine ancestor might not be able to forcefully break it. The 5 underworld sacred world was only a medium sacred world. Not to mention the sky martial divine ancestor, even a divine Emperor Tianjue was not seen for hundreds of thousands of years. Okay. Seeing that old ancestor Wu Ming was so confident, Nye Tian didn't say anything more. He nodded slightly and the two of them went to the 5 tribulations mountain range. After a few hours, Nye Tian and old ancestor Wu Ming arrived outside the 5 tribulations mountain range. However, at this moment, only Nye Tian was here. Patriarch 5 Nether had concealed himself and was hiding by his side to protect him. Nye Tian had a faint smile on his face as he calmly came to the sky above the 5 tribulations mountain range. At this time, there were hundreds of thousands of martial artists gathered in the sky above the 5 tribulations mountain range. Most of them were martial artists from the 5 underworld sacred world, while the other half were from other sacred world. These martial artists were all here for the same purpose, the power of the 5 tribulations. Nietion's sudden arrival caused an uproar in the crowd. "Look, it's that silver-haired swordsman! He killed the saint of the 10,000 evil sky and still dares to appear here. Isn't he courting death? Don't talk nonsense. This guy is so young, but he can actually kill an expert like the 10,000 evil sky. His talent and strength are unimaginable. This guy is definitely from a big force." Yes, yes, yes. Didn't a peerless expert appear in the past and suppress everyone and rescue him? At the same time, fear filled their eyes as they looked at Nietion. Nietion's strength was already very terrifying. Coupled with the peerless expert behind him, everyone was naturally afraid of him. Nietion's gaze swept across the crowd. He only smiled faintly and did not say anything. Nietion. At this time, a familiar figure appeared beside Nietion. Underworld Emperor. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly as he called out the other party's name. "It seems that you have completely recovered." The Underworld Emperor's gaze swept across Nietion. A strange light flickered in his eyes as he said, "It seems that you are really lucky. Not only did you survive, but you also received help from an expert and your strength has improved so much." "What are you trying to say?" Nietion's gaze darkened as he asked directly. "I want to confirm if our agreement is still valid." The Underworld Emperor's lips twitched as he smiled playfully. "I will share the power of the 5 tribulations with you, but share must be unharmed." Nietion's gaze was dark and cold as he spoke. "Of course." The Underworld Emperor smiled proudly, as if he was very satisfied with Nietion's attitude. "Kid, we meet again." At this moment, Nietion's expression suddenly changed as he heard a sinister and familiar voice in his mind. "The heart of 10,000 evil." Nietion's heart sank when he heard this voice. He was quite surprised. He did not expect that the heart of 10,000 evil would appear again at this time. "Kid, I said that we will meet again. And when we do, you will be very surprised." Then, the heart of 10,000 evil's voice rang out again with a hint of mockery. At the same time, Nietion suddenly sensed a familiar aura, which made him frown. He abruptly turned around to look at the void, where a figure appeared. It turned out to be the Saint Son of all evil. Chapter 3793. Chapter 3788. Arrogance. Nietion's pupils constricted the moment he saw the Saint of all evil. He had never expected the Saint of all evil to still be alive. He remembered very clearly that he had personally dug out the Saint of all evil's heart. How could the latter still be alive? The heart was one of the cores of a human. Even a sage would not be able to survive after losing his heart. How did the Saint of all evil survive after his heart was dug out? Nietion finally understood what the Saint of all evil's surprise was. It was the Saint of all evil. "Young man, are you surprised to see me again?" The Saint of all evil's eyes were murderous as he stared at Nietion cold. He was like a venomous wolf that wanted to devour Nietion. "I was a little surprised just now, but not anymore." Nietion smiled faintly and said, "It's not strange for a heartless person like you to be able to live without a heart. You're courting death." The Saint of all evil was enraged when he heard Nietion's words. He growled and his aura surged like a tsunami. Looking at his posture, he was about to attack Nietion. Nietion's lips curled into a cold smile and he said, "Come on. I can kill you once, so I can kill you again." "Is that so?" The Saint of all evil was extremely gloomy. The Grim Reaper's scythe appeared in his hand. Suddenly, the surrounding space was filled with a terrifying Grim Reaper's murderous aura, suffocating everyone. Boom! However, right at that moment, before the Saint Son of all evil could make a move, the void shook violently. Then, a terrifying force burst out of the void, morphed into a palm shadow, and shot towards Nietion. The sudden attack made Nietion frown. He immediately turned around and similarly attacked with his palm. The palm shadow was like a ferocious beast that pounced forward. Bang! In the next moment, the two palms collided with each other. The air trembled, and endless waves of air surged out violently. Nye Tion's silhouette was like a mountain, not moving an inch. He raised his head and stared into the air. He saw a black-robed figure standing there, cold and murderous, with a playful smile on his face. "Who is that?" When the crowd saw that figure, they couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. This person suddenly appeared and directly attacked Nye Tion. It was very surprising. Cloud Kongchue, the holy son of all evil's face sank when he saw that person. "Junior brother, it was this kid who defeated you, right?" At that moment the figure spoke with a hint of a smile on the corner of his lips. "Since you've already lost to him once, why don't you let me fight you this time?" "Yun Kongchue, what is the meaning of this?" The all-evil Holy Sun was furious upon hearing Yun Kongchue's words. Yun Kongchue's words in front of everyone was clearly to embarrass him. "Humph!" Yun Kongchue sneered, then swept his gaze across the crowd and said in a loud voice, "I'm Yun Kongchue, the chief disciple of the 10,000 Evil Sect. My junior brother was defeated by this silver-haired swordsman. As his senior brother, what's wrong with me standing up for him?" The crowd's expressions changed when they heard Yun Kongchue's words, and they began to discuss among themselves. "So he's the holy son of all evil's senior brother, the chief disciple of the 10,000 Evil Sect. No wonder his strength is so terrifying. It's reasonable for a senior brother to take revenge for his junior brother. Since this Yun Kongchue is the holy son of all evil's senior brother, his strength shouldn't be any weaker than the holy son of all evil. I wonder why he didn't become the holy son of the 10,000 Evil Sect." The crowd's gazes toward the holy son of all evil changed as they discussed the matter, as if they were complaining about Yun Kongchue's injustice. The holy son of all evil's eyes were filled with murderous intent, and his face was so gloomy that it looked like it was about to drip blood. Yun Kongchue's words in front of everyone were clearly to embarrass him. Although he and Yun Kongchue were senior brothers, they didn't have any brotherly feelings. There was only competition and resentment between them. Although he was the holy son of all evil, Yun Kongchue was the chief disciple of the 10,000 Evil Sect and the grandson of the great elder of the 10,000 Evil Sect. There was a direct competition between the holy son of all evil and the chief disciple of the 10,000 Evil Sect. Back then, Yun Kongchue had also been the best candidate for the position of the holy son of all evil. However, due to some special rules, he had lost the position of holy son and the heart of all evil. Yun Kongchue had always been brooding over this matter. However, rules were rules in the 10,000 Evil Sect. Even if he wasn't convinced, he couldn't replace the holy son of all evil. However, the competition between him and the holy son of all evil was getting more and more intense. A holy son and a chief disciple were competing for the title of the number one person of the 10,000 Evil Sect's younger generation. There was even a rumor in the 10,000 Evil Sect that Yun Kongchue might become the next master of all evil. This was what the holy son of all evil cared about. If he, the holy son of all evil, couldn't become the next master of all evil? Under such circumstances, Yun Kongchue had come in a domineering manner and claimed to be the holy son of all evil's senior brother. If this wasn't suppressing him, then what was it? "Junior brother, your complexion doesn't look too good. You should watch from the side. Leave this silver-haired brat to me." Yun Kongchue looked at the holy son of all evil from afar and smiled playfully. "Yun Kongchue, you're only a disciple of the 10,000 Evil Sect. In the future, please call me your Highness Holy Son." The holy son of all evil's eyes were spewing flames of anger as he growled in a low voice. "Your Highness Holy Son has quite the temper." Yun Kongchue sneered and ignored the holy son of all evil. He took a step forward and landed in a domineering manner. His venomous eyes glared at Nye Tion and sneered, "Brat, you even dared to kill the holy son of the 10,000 Evil Sect. This young master really admires you." You're very arrogant. That's good. Nie Tian laughed and said, I like killing arrogant people. Is that so? Yun Kongchue raised his eyebrows and smiled. You're much more arrogant than me. Make your move. The corner of Nie Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. He didn't want to waste any more time and spoke directly. Very well. Yun Kongchue grunted and unleashed his aura crazily. Waves of energy surged in the sky, as if even the heavens and earth were about to bow down to it. A first-layer heavenly righteousness saint. No wonder you're so arrogant. Nie Tian smiled indifferently. Instead of fear, his eyes were filled with disdain. Yun Ting's 10,000 miles, 1/. In the next moment, Yun Kongchue let out a bellow as a long, thin sword appeared in his hand. Then, he thrust it forward. Although the sword intent was extremely thin, it was extremely fierce. It tore through the void towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian's gaze froze and the corner of his lips twitched. With the sword in the sky in his hand, the spirit of the sky was unleashed. His sword aura increased to an unprecedented level. Shwa! Immediately, Nie Tian made his move. The sword in the sky slashed across the sky, causing the space around it to tremble as if it was about to shatter. In the next moment, two sword shadows crossed each other. In the sky, a ray of light flashed and a figure was sent flying, leaving a trail of blood in the air. Chapter 3794. The terrifying scene plunged the scene into dead silence. Countless eyes were locked on the silver-haired figure in the sky, their faces full of disbelief. They could not believe their eyes. It was too terrifying. Nie Tianling stood alone in the sky, like a sharp sword. The sharp sword will was incomparably fierce. On the other side, a badly mutilated figure was trembling uncontrollably, as if he couldn't stand up. His eyes were filled with horror. One of his arms had been cut off, and his whole body was dyed red with blood. It was Yun Kongchue, the chief disciple of the 10,000 Evil sect, a first-level heavenly righteousness saint expert, had been seriously injured by Nie Tian with one sword. One sword. With just one sword, Nie Tian had directly cut off one of Yun Kongchue's arms, making the latter completely lose the ability to fight again. Everyone was extremely shocked, and could not believe what they had seen. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed that a warrior at the third level of the heavenly mandate realm could seriously injure a warrior at the first level of the heavenly righteousness realm with one sword. It seemed that the gap in martial arts cultivation did not apply to Nie Tian at all. How is this possible? At this moment, the first person to react was the saint of all evil. His eyes trembled as he exclaimed in horror. In fact, Nie Tian defeating Yun Kongchue was what he had hoped to see. But he had never imagined that the battle would end like this. Nie Tian's strength had far exceeded his expectations. He did not even notice that Nie Tian was already a warrior at the third level of the heavenly mandate realm. But a few days ago, Nie Tian was clearly only at the first level of the heavenly mandate realm. In just a few days, Nie Tian's strength had actually increased by 2 levels. How was this possible? What was more frightening was that Nie Tian's combat strength had improved. It could be said that there was a qualitative change compared to before. Under normal circumstances, when a warrior broke through from the first level of the heavenly mandate realm to the third level of the heavenly mandate realm, the increase in combat strength would not be too great. Nie Tian, on the other hand, had completely transformed. Nie Tian had seriously injured Yun Kongchue with one sword. This was completely unimaginable to the saint of all evil. The saint of all evil had fought with Yun Kongchue many times and knew the latter's strength. He could not even take one sword from Yun Kongchue without using the death scythe. But now Yun Kongchue had been defeated by Nie Tian. How could he not be surprised? He had also noticed that Nie Tian had also greatly improved his sword. He had also noticed that Nie Tian's sword. All in all, compared to a few days ago, Nie Tian had made unimaginable progress. The Holy Son of all evil didn't know what had happened to Nye Tian, but at this moment, he felt an indescribable fear. In the distance, several other people were staring at Nye. Devil. And the same. In. The and. Saint, insane. Saint Bear. Saint, Nye again. Nye. Tian, he Saint Nye Tian. It seems that I have underestimated you. Only the Bodhi seed was very calm. He had a playful smile on his face as he thought to himself, this time, when the power of the 5 calamities opens, you are my strongest opponent. The Saint of all saints knew that Nye Tian would come back. But he did not expect Nye Tian to be so powerful. At this moment, the crowd reacted and started discussing. This guy is too terrifying. He injured the chief disciple of the Saint of all evil with 1 sword. If I remember correctly, he was only at the 1st level of the heavenly mandate realm when he fought with the Saint of all evil a few days ago. Why is he at the 3rd level now? Could it be that I'm seeing things? He really is at the 3rd level of the heavenly mandate realm. How did this guy improve so quickly? He improved 2 levels in just a few days. He is not human. As they spoke, they looked at Nye Tian with even more fear in their eyes. They deeply felt that a person like Nye Tian was too terrifying. They could not afford to offend him. Is this the strength of the chief disciple of the Saint of all evil? At this moment, Nye Tian stepped forward and sneered, "What a mess!" Yunqingchui's eyes trembled. Before he could say anything, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face turned pale. Yun Kongchui, don't embarrass yourself here. You've disgraced the 10,000 evil sky. The Saint of all evil's voice sounded at almost the same time. His voice was low and overbearing. He did not care about Yunqingchui's feelings at all. Yunqingchui looked at the Saint of all evil and spat out another mouthful of blood. He had been defeated by Nye Tian and looked down on by Nye Tian. He was already furious. The Saint of all evil's merciless mockery drove him crazy. But what could he do now? He could only retreat with his tail between his legs. He had wanted to use Nye Tian to show off and suppress the Saint of all evil. He had never expected that the result would be like this. He had really shot himself in the foot. Saint of all evil, you said that he was a disgrace. What about you? At that moment, Nye Tian's voice rang out again. Don't tell me you've forgotten how I dug out your heart with my 10,000 swords? The Saint of all evil roared furiously when he heard Nye Tian bring up the past. You're courting death. The moment he was tortured to death by Nye Tian was the greatest humiliation of his life. He would never be able to erase it. Nye Tian let out a cold laugh and didn't respond. Boom. At this moment, the death scythe in the Saint of all evil's hand slashed through the void. Terrifying dark runes appeared like dark clouds that enveloped the surrounding void for hundreds of thousands of meters. Huh! Nye Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw that the surrounding space was sealed by the runes. At the same time, the Bodhi seed's expression changed, and he exclaimed, "How can this be?" He could not believe his eyes. The Saint of all evil's death scythe had actually unsealed the 2nd heaven and earth seal. The fact that the Holy Son of all evil had come back to life was already very strange. After resurrection, the death scythe had become stronger again. This was even stranger. What exactly had the Saint of all evil experienced? His death scythe has become even stronger. Nye Tian's eyes were dark, and his expression was very ugly. Kid, you didn't expect this, right? My death scythe has unsealed the 2nd heaven and earth seal. The Saint of all evil's face was solemn as he laughed wildly. This is all thanks to you. If not for you, I wouldn't have known that the evil heart has the secret of undying 9 times. Ha! 9 deaths? Nye Tian's brow furrowed, and his expression grew even more grim. The Saint of all evil had indeed relied on the evil heart to resurrect. However, Nye Tian had a faint feeling that the Saint of all evil's resurrection was not that simple. The evil heart had clearly broken free from the Saint of all evil's control, but it had returned to his body. This in itself was not normal. "Kid, are you afraid?" The Saint of all evil became even more arrogant when he saw that Nye Tian did not speak. "Make your move." Nye Tian slowly raised his head and replied with a cold smile. His entire being was domineering and sharp like an unsheathed sword. Chapter 3795. Boom! High up in the sky, the Saint of all evil took a step forward. His aura soared to the extreme, and the violent power surged. It was extremely terrifying. Bang! Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he also took a step forward. Suddenly, the two auras collided, and a muffled sound was heard in the void, as if two mountains had collided. Nye Tian and the Saint of all evil retreated dozens of meters at the same time, then stabilized themselves at the same time. Huh! The Saint of all evil was surprised, and he looked horrified. His scythe of death had already unsealed two seals of heaven and earth, and his strength had increased to the seventh realm of the heavenly mandate realm. However, in a head-on collision of auras, Nye Tian was not weaker than him at all. The improvement of Nye Tian's strength had far exceeded his expectations. At this moment, Nye Tian also had a surprised expression on his face. He was very surprised that his strength could actually improve to such an extent. The awakening of the mark of the ancestral dragon had improved his dragon vein, and his martial body had become much stronger. As a result, the pressure from the inverse mark of the divine demon that he had to endure was much weaker. Therefore, his strength had soared compared to a few days ago. Everyone was surprised to see that Nye Tian and the Saint of all evil were fighting again, and they were equally matched. A few days ago, Nye Tian was completely suppressed by the Saint of all evil, but now, his aura was no weaker than the Saint of all evils. The improvement of his strength was astonishing. "Boy, your strength has improved a lot." The Saint of all evil sneered, and his eyes were extremely gloomy. "But in this battle you will die without a doubt. Is that so?" Nye Tian also sneered and said loudly, "Saint of all evil, if I kill you a second time, will you still be alive?" Insolence! The Saint of all evil's eyes trembled, and he suddenly became furious. The scythe of death slashed across the void, and suddenly, several strands of black gas appeared, condensing into sinister ghost claws in the void, and suddenly pressed down on Nye Tian. Sacred heaven-defying sword, heaven and earth unite, Yang's sacrifice. Nye Tian did not dodge at all, and he spoke in a low voice. The sword radiance in the sky shone brightly, and the sword will shot up into the sky like a surging wave. Boom! Bang! 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 In the next moment, the sword's shadow blasted out and directly smashed several sinister ghost claws. The void was in chaos. The holy son of 10,000 evil let out a cry of surprise when he saw this. His figure was forced back several thousand meters, and a crimson sword mark appeared on his chest. Fortunately, he had dodged in time. Otherwise, even if that sword didn't kill him, he would have lost a layer of skin. He did not expect Nye Tian's attack to be so terrifying. Only now did he realize that after not seeing him for a few days, the truly terrifying thing about Nye Tian was that he possessed a sword intent that was far stronger than before. Saint son of all evil, if the Grim Reaper side with 2 heaven and earth seals is only this powerful, it will be too disappointing. Nye Tianling stood in the void, his eyes filled with cold and disdainful killing intent. He was extremely provocative. "Brat, you've underestimated me." The saint's son of all evil's eyes suddenly darkened, and his eyes became gloomy and sinister. Suddenly, a terrifying Grim Reaper's aura circulated around his body. Waves of terrifying energy formed runes outside his body, making him look extremely sinister. Extremely terrifying. What a terrifying aura! Everyone could feel the terrifying aura around the saint's son of all evil. They could not help but tremble in fear. That aura was extremely sinister, and seemed to contain some kind of devouring aura that could tear one's divine soul apart. That's more like it. Facing the saint's son of all evil, Nye Tian sneered again, and the provocative intent in his eyes became even more obvious. You're courting death. The saint's son of all evil was instantly enraged when he felt Nye Tian's contempt. After a low roar, the Grim Reaper scythe suddenly appeared and slashed across the void. Then, a terrifying Grim Reaper's aura was released, condensing into blade ripples in the air and attacking Nye Tian. Boom, boom, boom. Wherever the Grim Reaper scythe passed, the void rumbled incessantly, and the entire space seemed like it was about to explode. 9 limits of the starry sky, sun annihilation. Facing the powerful Grim Reaper scythe, Nye Tian was not afraid at all. Instead, he sneered and displayed the sky sword in the void, bursting with an incomparably powerful aura. The sword's shadow was like a wild dragon that soared into the sky. The terrifying aura blasted everything. Boom, 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 boom. In the next instant, the two terrifying forces collided, and a loud explosion erupted in the air. The violent force was like a surging wave, spreading wildly in all directions as if it wanted to annihilate everything. The figures of Nye Tian and the saint's son of all evil retreated a few thousand meters at the same time and then stabilized themselves at the same time. In this head-on clash, the two of them were almost equally matched. However, Nye Tian's martial body was more powerful, while the saint's son of all evil's martial body was slightly weaker. The latter was slightly injured again. Damn it! The saint's son of all evil's eyes were bloodshot, and he roared like an enraged beast. Is that all? Nye Tianling laughed, and his eyes became even more disdainful. Saint's son of all evil, if you still don't use the enchantment, you will lose. Brat, you are too arrogant. The saint's son of all evil roared. Even if I don't use the Grim Reaper enchantment, I will still kill you. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, the Grim Reaper aura on the saint's son of all evil's body became even more terrifying. It was like an erupting volcano, constantly erupting. Waves of terrifying aura condensed into strange runes, which then branded on his body, making him look even more evil and sinister. Huh! Nye Tian's eyes darkened when he saw this scene, and he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. He was very surprised that the saint's son of all evil didn't use the Grim Reaper enchantment. Instead, he used an even more terrifying power. Brat, I still have to thank you. The saint's son of all evil laughed sinisterly. If you hadn't killed me, I wouldn't have known that the evil heart of all evil still has the secret of 9 death. It is because of you that I can activate the all-evil body. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, his body shook and suddenly, the Grim Reaper aura exploded into the sky. It was like an endless dark cloud, causing the space within hundreds of thousands of meters to instantly become dark and gloomy. All-evil body? Nye Tian was stunned, and his expression turned slightly ugly. It turned out that the power used by the saint's son of all evil was called the all-evil body. Brat, this is the first time this holy son has used the 10,000 evil body. It is your honor to die under the 10,000 evil body. The 10,000 evil holy son roared in a low voice. His eyes were extremely sinister, as if he wanted to devour someone. Chapter 3796. Roar. The dragon's roar reverberated through the 9 heavens. Everyone felt as if there was a sudden clap of thunder in their ears, and their eardrums were about to burst. Such a terrifying dragon's roar was too terrifying. While it was shocking, it also made everyone's blood boil. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on Nye Tian, and they were filled with astonishment. They had not expected that Nye Tian's body contained such a massive dragon aura. Boom! At this time, the dragon aura in Nye Tian's body was still being released crazily. It formed an ocean of dragon aura outside his body, boiling and violent. The explosive aura seemed to be able to destroy everything. How is this possible? The Holy Son of all evil looked at Nyetian, and his expression changed as he cried out in horror. He couldn't believe that Nyetian was able to unleash such a terrifying dragon chi in a split second. Nyetian was not a member of the dragon tribe at all. How could he possess such a terrifying dragon aura? The Holy Son of all evil had seen countless warriors of the dragon tribe, and even many geniuses of the dragon tribe. However, those people's dragon aura could not be compared to Nyetian's. Even the experts of the dragon tribe only had more dragon aura than Nyetian, but it was not as vigorous as Nyetian's. This undoubtedly meant that Nyetian possessed a more powerful dragon vein than those people. Although it was rare for a human warrior to possess a dragon vein, it was considered normal. However, it was not normal for someone like Nyetian to have a dragon vein that was stronger than the warriors of the dragon tribe. This dragon aura, could it be? At this time, the Underworld Emperor looked at Nyetian in horror. His expression changed, and he was shocked to the extreme. Ancestral dragon aura. At the same time, the Bodhi seed said what the Underworld Emperor wanted to say. Both of them sensed at the same time that the dragon aura released by Nyetian was the ancestral dragon aura. Their eyes trembled uncontrollably and their faces turned from shock to stupor. They did not expect that the dragon aura released by Nyetian was actually the ancestral dragon aura. How is this possible? The next moment, the Underworld Emperor and the Bodhi seed exclaimed in shock. They had both fought with Nyetian and seen Nyetian release dragon aura before. However, at that time, Nyetian's dragon aura was not the ancestral dragon aura at all. Then why did Nyetian possess the ancestral dragon aura now? Unless he has awakened the mark of the ancestral dragon. The Emperor of the Underworld's expression changed again. He was extremely shocked, and his face was completely frozen. Ancestral dragon aura. At the same time, the Bodhi seed also thought of this point, and he thought even more deeply. The corner of his mouth twitched inexplicably, and he thought coldly in his heart, it seems like the person who saved him is a powerhouse of the dragon clan, and he helped him awaken the mark of the ancestral dragon. Back then, Nyetian had brutally killed the son of all evil, and a secret guard from the heaven of all evil had killed him. Eventually, a mysterious person had rescued him. It seemed that the Bodhi seed was a member of the dragon race. It was this person who had helped Nyetian awaken the ancestral dragon aura. The Bodhi seed was indeed meticulous. He had guessed the truth with just a bit of information. Many experts who were hiding in the void also sensed Nyetian's ancestral dragon aura, and gasped with astonishment. These people had guessed that there was an expert of the dragon race behind Nyetian. Although the dragon clan had declined, they were still an extremely powerful force in the all-heaven sacred world. They struck fear into people's hearts. Son of all evil, make your move. Nyetian raised his eyebrows. He smiled coldly. Let me see how strong your body of all evil is. You're courting death. The son of all evil roared furiously. He moved and swung the scythe of the god of death again. The aura of the god of death was released. The world trembled and the atmosphere became even more sinister. Whoosh! In the next instant, endless aura of the god of death was released. Like a sky full of dark clouds, it pressed down on Nyetian. The son of all evil, who had activated the body of all evil, had become several times stronger. The power of the scythe of the god of death was enough to kill an ordinary fifth-tier heavenly justice great sage. Roar! Facing the raging death god Chi, Nyetian took a step forward. In the next moment, an enormous crimson dragon appeared in the sea of dragon aura around him. With a wild roar, it unleashed an extremely violent lightning power. This was the first time Nyetian had used the ancestral dragon aura. The power that was as vigorous as the sea made his blood boil. The power of the mark of the ancestral dragon was more terrifying than he had expected. Boom! In the next moment, the crimson dragon soared into the sky, and its huge body directly rushed into the death chi. Suddenly, the void rumbled endlessly, and the world was filled with the sound of thunder. The world trembled, and the void trembled. This. The crowd looked at the scene in the sky. They were so shocked that they could not speak. Boom! Chi chi chi! At this time there was a roar. Then, the aura of the god of death began to disperse. It collapsed in the void and made an ear-piercing sound. Bang! In the next instant there was a muffled sound. Then, a figure flew out, leaving a trail of blood in the void. It was glaring and bloody. Son of all evil! The crowd was shocked. They immediately recognized that the blood-colored figure was the son of all evil. Boom! At this time, there was a cracking sound in the sky. Suddenly, the giant dragon soared into the sky and broke through the aura of the god of death. The void suddenly became bright. Then, a fierce figure appeared. He stood in the sky like a dragon god. Under his feet was a giant red dragon that was tens of thousands of meters long. Nia Tian, the emperor of the underworld, and the others looked up and exclaimed. Nia Tian's face was calm. The corner of his mouth twitched. He took a step forward, and the giant dragon under his feet turned into dragon aura and disappeared. His eyes darkened and locked on to the son of all evil. He sneered. Son of all evil, is this your body of all evil? You can't even withstand a single blow. You! The son of all evil stabilized his body. His eyes trembled and his face was as white as paper. He was completely speechless. This was the first time he used the body of all evil, and he was completely crushed by Nia Tian. This kind of blow directly shook his martial heart. He dared not imagine how Nia Tian, a non-dragon martial artist, could use such a powerful dragon aura. This battle is over. Nia Tian smiled faintly. Then, his figure moved and directly moved towards the son of all evil. You, what do you want? The son of all evil felt a murderous intent. His face suddenly changed and he asked in a trembling voice. I said that if I can kill you once, I can kill you again. Nia Tianling sneered and said, Don't you have the 9 deaths invincibility? I want to see if you can come back to life after I kill you again. The son of all evil's eyes trembled. His face was ashen. At this time, Nia Tian actually wanted to kill him again. The son of all evil's eyes suddenly trembled. He looked at the void around him, but he could not sense any aura. The dark guards of the kingdom of all evil seemed to have all left. Your dark guards can't save you. Nia Tian, of course, knew what the son of all evil was thinking. He sneered and directly stepped forward. Chapter 3797. Boom! High up in the sky, Nia Tian descended with great momentum. His entire body emitted a murderous aura as if he was the god of death. No! In an instant, the saint of all evil felt the aura of death and screamed. The fear in his heart was magnified through his trembling eyes. Nia Tian's face was gloomy. His figure arrived in the blink of an eye, determined to kill. Kid, don't kill him. However, right at this moment, a deep voice resounded in Nia Tian's divine sense. His body froze in midair as if the space was frozen. The heart of all evil. Nia Tian frowned and exclaimed. The voice just now came from the strange divine soul in the heart of all evil. He didn't expect that the voice would appear again. The saint of all evil's eyes suddenly shrank. He couldn't believe that Nia Tian had really stopped. What's going on? The sudden scene caused everyone's expressions to freeze, and they were all astonished. Nia Tian's murderous intent was so firm. Why did he suddenly stop? Kid, do me a favor and spare his life. At this moment, Nia Tianling stood in the void and the voice of the divine soul rang in his divine sense again. Why? The corner of Nia Tian's mouth twitched and he wore a playful expression. I helped you once, shouldn't you help me once? The voice said with a chuckle. That's true. Nia Tian laughed and said, but this son of all evil is my mortal enemy. He's already in my hands, yet you want me to spare his life? Don't you think you're forcing me to do something I can't do? Kid, don't be so sour. I won't ask you to help me for free. The voice laughed strangely and said, I'll tell you something in exchange for his life. How about it? What is it? Nye Tion's eyes narrowed and his expression was a bit strange. Don't worry. I guarantee you that you won't suffer a loss. The voice didn't answer directly. Instead, it smiled deeply. Senior, you have to tell me, what is it that is worth the life of 10,000 evil saint children? Nye Tion's mouth twitched and he didn't want to give up. In fact, he didn't really want to ask the owner of this voice for any benefit. He just felt that this soul was hiding in the heart of 10,000 evil, so its identity must be extraordinary, so he wanted to test it out. At this moment, he was really curious as to what this soul was trying to tell him. It's a secret related to the origin star stone. The divine soul laughed and said, Little kid, don't worry. I don't want to trick a junior. Raw star stone? Nye Tion's eyes narrowed when he heard this, and his face darkened. He hadn't expected the divine soul to know about primal star stones. Moreover, from this person's tone, it seemed that he was very familiar with origin star stones. Little kid, it's a deal then. The tribulation spirit with the power of the 5 calamities is about to appear. Get ready to snatch it. Before Nye Tion could agree, the divine soul laughed and disappeared. Tribulation spirit? Nye Tion was stunned, and his heart was filled with shock. This divine soul gave him an uneasy feeling, and there was a faint trace of worry in his heart. He didn't believe that this divine soul would be kind enough to save the son of 10,000 evil. Perhaps the divine soul and the son of 10,000 evil were dependent on each other, and if the son of 10,000 evil died, he would be in danger, so he didn't want the son of 10,000 evil to die. However, he was more curious about the tribulation spirit that the divine soul mentioned. Kaboom! At this moment, a loud explosion suddenly came from the 5 calamities mountain range. Following this, a terrifying force appeared, and a monstrous and violent aura swept out, causing the entire 5 calamities mountain range to shake. Nye Tion's eyes narrowed slightly, and he immediately felt a terrifying aura coming from the mountain range. In the next instant, the soul of the sky in his body reacted, as if it had been stimulated by something, and became active. The tribulation spirit is about to appear. On the other side, the Bodhi seed looked at the 5 calamities mountain range from afar, and his eyes were trembling and burning. The tribulation spirit, he mentioned something similar to the divine soul. It seemed that this tribulation spirit was something extraordinary. Kaboom! At this moment, the entire 5 calamities mountain range roared again, and suddenly, an enormous energy fluctuation appeared in the void, and rippled out in all directions. Nye Tion immediately felt that the soul of the sky in his body was stimulated again, and it was extremely active. Old ancestor Wuming is right. The power of the 5 calamities can indeed break the seal of the heaven and earth seal. Nye Tion's eyes trembled, and his expression became burning. He could feel that there was a special resonance between the power of the 5 calamities mountain range and the heart of the sky. The power that appeared in the 5 calamities mountain range was the power of the 5 calamities mountain range, and that was why the soul of the sky was so active. Roar! At this moment, a deep roar sounded in the 5 calamities mountain range, and then a scarlet power that was as red as fire appeared in the sky, and in the blink of an eye, it condensed into a small beast. It was only a few meters tall, but its aura was extremely violent, like a ball of fire. It was incomparably blazing. The first tribulation spirit has appeared. The Bodhi seed saw the little beast, and his eyes trembled, and he cried out in surprise. This little beast was the tribulation spirit with the power of the 5 calamities. The time when the first tribulation spirit appeared was a bit earlier than the Bodhi seed had expected. However, he did not care. His eyes trembled slightly, and he immediately moved like a ray of light, charging straight at the tribulation spirit. That's the tribulation spirit with the power of the 5 calamities. Everyone, go get it! The crowd shouted when they saw the Bodhiseed's figure move, and they all moved together, charging at the tribulation spirit. Boom! 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 Countless figures moved at the same time, and a violent aura soared into the sky. The void rumbled, and the sound of the aura clashing could be heard continuously. Facing the tribulation spirit, no one was willing to fall behind, and they would risk their lives to get the tribulation spirit. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was a bit confused. He still did not know what a tribulation spirit was, and what it had to do with the power of the 5 calamities. Roar! Right at this moment, another low roar rang out. In the distance, another tribulation spirit appeared. However, this little beast was completely different from the previous one. Its body was actually transparent, but its aura was even more powerful than the previous one. Its entire body was surging with a tempestuous aura. Another tribulation spirit. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he exclaimed in his heart, "Roar!" Next, another roar sounded, and in the distance, a third tribulation spirit appeared. Chapter 3798. Nie Tian's eyes swept across the 3 tribulation spirits as his lips curled into a smile. Roar! At this moment, the 4th tribulation spirit appeared. Its body was dark and gloomy, and its aura was explosive. Upon seeing the tribulation spirit, Nie Tian's pupils constricted as he exclaimed inwardly, 5 elements. He had already discovered something. The 4th tribulation spirit confirmed that the 5 tribulations corresponded to the 5 elements. The first scarlet tribulation spirit that appeared was a fire attribute tribulation power. The second one was a transparent tribulation spirit, which corresponded to water-type tribulation power. The third one to appear was a cyan tribulation spirit, which corresponded to the wood attribute tribulation power. The 4th tribulation spirit that had just appeared corresponded to earth-type tribulation power. If there were no accidents, the next tribulation spirit should correspond to the metal element. Roar! At this moment, the 5th tribulation spirit appeared. It was as blazing as the sun as it soared into the sky. The 5th tribulation spirit really is of the metal element. Nie Tian's eyes widened when he saw the 5th tribulation spirit. His guess was right. The 5 tribulations were formed from the 5 elements of the earth. There were a total of 5 tribulation spirits: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Hua! At this moment, after the 5 tribulation spirits appeared, a huge force appeared in the void. It spread out in space-time like an invisible net, instantly enveloping the space within hundreds of thousands of meters. What a powerful barrier aura! Nie Tian's eyes couldn't help but tremble as he sensed the aura of the barrier in the air. He had never felt such an enormous barrier aura before. It actually made his divine soul tremble in an instant. Tribulation barrier. At the same time, Fat Cat's voice sounded. She was pleasantly surprised as she reminded Nie Tian, "Quickly enter the barrier." Hearing Fat Cat's words, Nie Tian nodded. A pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back as he dashed into the barrier like a bolt of lightning. At this moment, several silhouettes appeared in the air. It was the hidden experts that were rushing towards the barrier. Bang! 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 But just as they were about to get close to the barrier, they were blown away by a huge force. Their bodies trembled in the void, and then they exploded and died. The void was drenched in blood. Nie Tian turned around just in time to see this scene. His eyes trembled in shock. The auras of these hidden powerhouses were very strong. They were obviously heavenly tribulation Saint King powerhouses. Why were they directly killed by the barrier power? They are all heavenly tribulation Saint King experts and have the power of heavenly tribulation in their bodies. Trying to enter the heavenly tribulation barrier is simply courting death. The Fat Cat sneered and said, The repulsive force between the powers of the heavenly tribulation is extremely great. This kind of force is enough to make them explode and die. Repulsive force? Nye Tian went blank for a moment, confused. Heavenly tribulation martialists have heavenly tribulation energy in their bodies, and heavenly tribulation barriers also contain extremely powerful heavenly tribulation energy. The power of the heavenly tribulation repels each other, and those martial artists were killed by this repulsive force, Fat Cat explained briefly with a sneer on her face. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly as he understood. Those martialists were killed by the repulsive force of the heavenly tribulation energy in their bodies and the power of the heavenly tribulation in the barrier. The heavenly tribulation barrier was very ingenious. In this way, martialists above the level of heavenly tribulation could not enter the barrier. Dragon Shepherd, it's up to you now. In the void, old ancestor Wu Ming's figure was perfectly hidden. His eyes were secretly staring at Nye Tian as he thought to himself. Even he could not resist the repulsive force of the heavenly tribulation energy, so he could not enter the barrier. At this time, the heavenly tribulation barrier began to spread in all directions. Those hidden martialists retreated one after another. In just the blink of an eye, the heavenly tribulation barrier covered the entire Five Calamities mountain. All the experts rose into the sky and secretly observed the barrier. At the same time, in the heavenly tribulation barrier, there was a tragic scene of slaughter. Tens of thousands of martialists were fighting for the tribulation spirits. The void was in chaos, and violent power roared continuously, rampaging in the space-time. Nye Tianling stood in the void, his eyes fixed on the fire elemental tribulation spirits in the distance. He had already decided to get the fire elemental tribulation spirits first. Boom! In the next moment, he moved. The soul of the sky in his body opened, and the sword will all over his body surged to the extreme. The sword in his hand slashed down with a loud bang. The void trembled, and a sword shadow rushed out like a wild dragon. Wherever it passed, the martialists within a few hundred meters were forcibly knocked away. However, those people were not injured. They were just pushed away. Nye Tian only wanted to get the tribulation spirit. He did not want to hurt others, let alone kill people. However, there were still people who were ignorant enough to charge towards Nye Tian while shouting, "Brat, the tribulation spirit is mine. Get the hell out of my way. The one who should get lost is you." Nye Tian's eyes suddenly darkened. With a low roar, he slashed out with the sword in the sky. Wherever the sword's shadow fell, blood splattered everywhere. The martialist was directly killed, and not even his bones were left. This guy is so strong. Seeing this scene, everyone exclaimed in shock, and their figures retreated. When they saw clearly that the person who attacked was Nye Tian, the fear in their eyes became even more obvious. "I don't want to kill people, but if you come at me yourself, I don't mind killing a few of you." Nye Tian's eyes were incomparably cold. He said coldly, "If you don't want to die, get lost." As soon as the last word was spoken, everyone's eyes trembled, and they could not help but retreat. The corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched coldly. He took a step forward, and the wings on his back flapped. Like a bolt of lightning, he rushed straight toward the fire elemental tribulation spirit. His speed was extremely fast, and his sword aura was like a mountain. Everywhere he passed, the martialists in front of him were all scattered. In the blink of an eye, Nye Tian's figure arrived, and he was only several tens of thousands of meters away from the fire elemental tribulation spirits. At this time, he could feel the restlessness of the soul in the sky, and his aura became much more violent. Being so close to the fire elemental tribulation spirits, he could feel the great power contained within them. "Nye Tian, you also have your eyes on the fire elemental tribulation spirits." However, at this moment a deep voice rang out, "It seems like there will be a fight between us." Blazing Jiufeng. Hearing this voice, Nye Tian immediately turned around and saw a familiar face. He shouted the latter's name and said coldly, "The fire elemental tribulation spirits are mine." Blazing Jiufeng had the power of the golden flames inside him, so he needed both the fire elemental tribulation spirits. But compared to the fire elemental tribulation spirits, he desired the fire elemental tribulation spirits more. As long as he obtained the fire elemental tribulation spirits, he would have enough strength to take back the heaven-punishing demon heart from the Emperor of Netherworld's body. Chapter 3799. Lian Jiufeng, since we both want the fire tribulation spirit, then let's do it on our own. Nie Tian stared at Lian Jiufeng's murderous expression and smiled coldly. Then, he moved and flew towards the fire tribulation spirit like a streak of light. Don't even think about it. Lian Jiufeng's eyes darkened. He growled and released the power of golden flames from his body. Like a fireball, he turned into a sea of fire wherever he passed. Ah! A series of miserable screams followed. Lian Jiufeng had fused with the heaven-punishing demon heart, and the aura of golden flames in his body had changed qualitatively. Normal cultivators could not endure it. In the blink of an eye, blood was spilled everywhere Lian Jiufeng passed. Dozens of cultivators were burned to death by the power of golden flames. Lian Jiufeng, you really are unscrupulous for the fire tribulation spirit. Nie Tian's eyes focused slightly. His expression was murderous. Unlike him, Lian Jiufeng was not a kind person. In Lian Jiufeng's eyes, these normal martial practitioners were probably even less than ants. As long as he could get the fire tribulation spirit, he did not care how many people he killed. Nie Tian was different from Lian Jiufeng. He had his own principles. He wanted the fire tribulation spirit very much, but he would not kill people for it. He was very fast as he charged toward the fire tribulation spirit. The people in front of him felt the powerful impact and moved out of the way. Nie Tian's cultivation could only be considered average in the group, but his combat power was far greater than anyone else's. "It's that kid. Get out of the way." When the others saw Nie Tian rushing over, their expressions changed and they cried out in alarm. They had seen Nie Tian fight before, so they naturally knew how terrifying he was. No one dared to stop him. Whoosh! Nie Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. The wings on his back shook and he shot into the sky. He and Lian Jiufeng were extremely fast and they moved side by side. But the fire tribulation spirit was just as fast. It cut through the sky like a line of fire. Nie Tian furrowed his brows. He could feel that the fire-attributed energy in the sky was getting stronger and stronger. That violent aura felt like it was going to incinerate people. What is this fire tribulation spirit? How can it release such a terrifying power? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, but he did not stop. Instead, he sped up. The ultimate fire scarlet heaven armor appeared on his body, and he flew towards the fire calamity spirit like a god of fire. Boom! On the other side, Lian Jiufeng's aura was even stronger than before. The power of the golden flames around him was incomparably violent, and it actually condensed into tongues of flame as it charged through the air. It was like a fire beast hiding in the air, constantly breathing in and out. The space within 10,000 meters of Shaoqin was filled with raging flames. The other cultivators couldn't even get close to him. The blazing 9 blades that have fused with the heaven-punishing demon heart is much stronger than before. Nie Tian could not help but frown when he sensed Lian Jiufeng's violent aura from over 100,000 kilometers away. Right now, Lian Jiufeng was much stronger than he had imagined. Nie Tian, give up. The fire calamity spirit is mine. Lian Jiufeng roared arrogantly. A pair of golden flame wings appeared on his back and unfurled in the air. They were several hundred meters long. Whoosh! Lian Jiufeng's speed abruptly increased in an instant. Waves of fire surged through the air, and he left Nie Tian behind. Nie Tian's eyes darkened. He saw Lian Jiufeng charging towards the fire calamity spirit. He was about to get it. Don't worry, the fire calamity spirit is extremely violent. It won't be subdued so easily. Fat Cat's voice suddenly rang out at this moment. Roar. Nye Tian went blank for a moment. Then, he heard the fire tribulation spirit's low roar echoing out from high above. Immediately afterwards, the streaks of fire in the void exploded one after another. Terrifying flame power burst forth at the same time, condensing into an enormous fireball that shot towards Blaze Jiufeng. Go. Nye Tian couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. He didn't think that the fire calamity spirit would be so violent. At this moment, he felt the aura of a rune. It turned out that the fire calamity spirit hadn't been frightened when it flew back and forth in the sky. It had carved some kind of rune in the air. At this moment, the fire calamity spirit activated the power of the rune and attacked Lian Jiufeng. Bang! Lian Jiufeng clearly didn't think that the fire calamity spirit would fight back. Caught off guard, he was hit by the fireball and sent flying, leaving a trail of fire in the air. Rumble! The huge flame impact produced by the fireball also forced the other warriors to retreat one after another. This is my chance. Nye Tian's eyes lit up when he saw this. The astral wings on his back shook, and he shot towards the fire calamity spirit like a ray of light. Nye Tian, be careful. However, at the same time, little Fat Cat's cry rang out, sounding very panicked. Nye Tian's expression changed. He felt a strange power coming at him in the next moment. It was murderous and violent, as if it could destroy everything in its path. Boom! In that moment of danger, he released the ancestral dragon's chi without a second thought and formed a dragon aura shield around his body. Bang! Immediately after, a terrifying force descended, directly landing on his body. A muffled sound rang out in the air as his body was directly sent flying. Nye Tian flew thousands of meters away before he managed to stabilize himself. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He raised his head and looked up into the sky. A tribulation spirit was there, and it was glaring at him fiercely. The Earth Calamity Spirit. Nye Tian's eyes darkened, and his expression turned ugly. The one that attacked him earlier was the Earth Calamity Spirit. Nye Tian didn't expect that these fire calamity spirits would help each other, and the strength of these fire calamity spirits far exceeded his expectations. Roar! Next, the Earth Calamity Spirit let out a low roar. Its silhouette flickered in the air, and it dashed towards Nye Tian. A powerful force descended, and a sandstorm appeared. Nye Tian's eyes darkened. The sword of sky slashed out, and a powerful sword intent blotted out the sky as it collided with the sandstorm. Rumble! The air trembled and a thunderous sound rang out. The violent energy rippled out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, sand and dust filled the air, covering a radius of tens of thousands of meters. Nye Tian's silhouette retreated, and his surroundings were shrouded by the sand and dust, making it impossible for him to see his surroundings. Boom! His body trembled, and he used his dragon chi to push the sand and dust away. Only then did he regain some vision. Chapter 3800. Nye Tian's face darkened when he didn't see any tribulation spirits. Nye Tian, look over there! Fat Cat's voice rang out, reminding Nye Tian. Nye Tian abruptly turned around and looked down at a mountain range. 5 tribulation spirits appeared in the distance and flew towards the ground. What are they doing? Nye Tian frowned, puzzled. 5 tribulation spirits gathered together and flew towards the same place. It was obviously unusual. The power of the 5 tribulations is over there. Fat Cat cried out in surprise. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed and the corner of his mouth twitched. Then he flapped his wings and dove down, chasing after the 5 tribulation spirits. The other cultivators also understood and rushed towards the valley of the 5 tribulations mountain range. Nye Tian, don't forget that we are companions now. A deep voice rang out in the sky and a familiar aura appeared. It was the Emperor of the Underworld. Are you reminding me that half of the power of the 5 tribulations belongs to you? Nie Tianling looked at the Emperor of the Underworld coldly, and said in a deep voice, "Smart." The Emperor of the Underworld laughed, and quickly came to Nie Tian's side. Share was still in his hands. He wasn't worried that Nie Tian would play any tricks. Nie Tian's face was gloomy. He didn't pay much attention to the Emperor of the Underworld and directly rushed towards the mountain range below. In the blink of an eye, he landed and entered a valley. The 5 tribulation spirits had hidden themselves in the valley and disappeared without a trace. The other martial artists also landed one after another, surrounding the entire valley. Nie Tian glanced around. There were still more than 10,000 cultivators here. In the short time they had been fighting for the tribulation spirits, more than 20,000 cultivators had died. At this time, everyone's eyes were fixed on the valley in front of them, but no one dared to act rashly. Based on the current situation, everyone would start a massacre for the power of the 5 tribulations. Of the 10,000 cultivators here, less than 1 in 10 would survive in the end. This was the stubbornness of a martial artist towards power. Even if they had to give up their lives for it, they wouldn't hesitate. After a while, everyone calmed down. A few of the stronger cultivators stepped forward and walked into the valley. The other martial artists felt that something was wrong, but they did not dare to make a move. Now was not the time to kill each other. At the very least, they had to see the tribulation spirit first. All the warriors entered the valley one after another and immediately felt a strange aura filling the surrounding space. The moment he entered the valley, Nie Tian's expression changed. He hadn't expected the valley to be so big. It was hundreds of thousands of meters wide. Moreover, there were more than 10 huge stone statues erected on the outskirts of the valley. Each of them was thousands of meters tall, and they were all strangely shaped giant beasts with extremely powerful auras. What is this place? Why are there so many stone statues? Someone exclaimed in shock. The others noticed that something was wrong, and they couldn't help but become nervous. Nie Tian was relatively calm. He secretly released his divine sense and sensed the entire valley. It was very strange. He had seen the 5 tribulation spirits enter the valley with his own eyes, but now there was no sign of them. He couldn't even sense the aura of the tribulation spirit. After a long time, he withdrew his divine sense, and his expression became even more strange. He didn't sense any space-time aura, which meant that there shouldn't be a secret door in this valley. Where did the 5 tribulation spirits go? The others were also puzzled, and their expressions became even more nervous. Boom! Right at this moment, a rumbling sound rang out, startling everyone. They turned around and saw that a huge stone statue was moving. What's going on? Everyone looked at the huge stone statue, and their expressions changed. Many of them were pale with fright. The strange movement of the stone statue was really a bit frightening. Nie Tian's expression also changed. He spread out his divine sense and locked onto the stone statue. At this time, he sensed a tribulation aura surging inside the stone statue. It was moving slowly, like an imprisoned beast trying to break out of its cage. Could the power of the 5 tribulations be inside these stone statues? Nie Tian frowned and guessed. Nie Tian, there's something strange about these stone statues. At this time, the Bodhi seed came over and looked at Nie Tian. Bodhi seed, you should know more about the power of the 5 tribulations than I do. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he smiled. The Bodhi seed also smiled. The power of the 5 tribulations is used to unseal the seal of heaven and earth. You alone can't use the power of 5 tribulations. Why don't we work together and fight for it? Work together? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He thought he had heard wrong. The mighty Bodhi seed actually wanted to work with him? I want to know what the power of the 5 tribulations is. Nie Tian didn't directly answer the Bodhi seed. Instead, he asked in a deep voice, The power of the 5 tribulations is just a type of tribulation energy. The so-called 5 tribulations are the collective name for the 5 tribulations. The Bodhi seed nodded. So you're saying that the 5 tribulations can unseal the seal of heaven and earth? Nye Tian's lips curled up as his gaze heated up. Yes. The Bodhi seed nodded. Of the 5 tribulations of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, I only want the wood tribulation. What do you think? Nye Tian frowned and glanced at the Underworld Emperor. Nye Tian, I only want the earth tribulation. The Underworld Emperor knew what Nye Tian was thinking and his lips twitched. Nye Tian's gaze darkened. He couldn't help but feel strange. It seemed that the power of the 5 tribulations was different and had different elements. The Bodhi seed needed the wood tribulation, the Underworld Emperor needed the earth tribulation, and the 9 flames blades needed the fire tribulation. Moreover, Nye Tian felt that the power of the 5 tribulations wasn't as simple as the Bodhi seed said. If the power of the 5 tribulations could unseal the seal of heaven and earth on the heart of heaven and earth, then it must be related to the 9 hearts of heaven and earth. Sure. Nye Tian didn't hesitate. He smiled and agreed to work with the Bodhi seed. Since the Bodhi seed and the Underworld Emperor didn't conflict, there was no harm in having a powerful partner. The Bodhi seed was a gloomy person, but he seemed to be a man of his word. Moreover, Nye Tian had many enemies at the moment. The 9 flames blades, Devil's Knight, and the all-evil Sun wanted nothing more than to devour him. With the Bodhi seed and the Underworld Emperor as his partners, the pressure on him would be greatly reduced. Bang bang bang. At this moment, the moving stone statue suddenly exploded. The layer of stone on its surface shattered, and a powerful aura was released, instantly enveloping the entire valley. Roar! Then, a deep roar was heard and a strange scene appeared. Among the rubble, a gigantic beast rolled out. Its tremendous chi shook the heaven and earth and shook the entire area. Oh! Nye Tian's gaze darkened. He was quite surprised. So there really was an ancient sacred beast imprisoned within the stone statue. Chapter 38:01. What's going on? When the crowd saw that the stone statues in the valley were moving, they could not help but panic. Many of them revealed expressions of fear and horror. Oh no! Nye Tian's expression changed as well, and he cursed in his heart. These stone statues seemed to have some kind of sealing power, imprisoning the primordial sacred beasts within. But now, the seal of the stone statues seemed to have been stimulated by some kind of power, and the primordial sacred beasts directly broke free. Bang bang bang! Just when everyone was in a state of panic, the stone statues started to crumble one after another. In an instant, the entire valley was filled with rubble and sand. A terrifying aura was released, like a turbulent current, violently rampaging through the air. Nye Tian glanced around and counted. There were a total of 15 ancient divine beasts in the valley. Each of them was several hundred meters long. Compared to ordinary divine beasts, they weren't huge. Instead, they seemed very small. However, their auras were extremely frightening, and the power they exuded was terrifying. The power released from their bodies was comparable to that of a human Saint Tianyi. Most of the martial artists present were heavenly mandate Saint Masters. Only a very small portion had the strength of Saint Tianyi, but they were only at the primary level of Saint Tianyi. It was very difficult for them to fight against these sacred beasts. Run! At this time, someone came to his senses and shouted. He directly rushed towards the exit of the valley. Bang! However, before that person could reach the exit, he was hit by a violent force that fell from the sky. He directly exploded into a bloody light, and no bones were left. Roar! Following that, a deep roar was heard. An ancient sacred beast with 4 wings on its back landed on the ground and blocked the exit of the valley. The martial artist just now died tragically under the palm power of this sacred beast. When the crowd saw this, their expressions changed, and the fear in their hearts became even stronger. The sacred beast blocked the exit. Obviously, it wanted to kill them one by one like turtles in a jar. At this time, more than a dozen sacred beasts soared into the sky, covering the entire sky above the valley. A huge and boundless power appeared, covering the sky and covering the earth. Suddenly, all the martial artists felt an unprecedented sense of oppression. Everyone, let's attack together and kill the one blocking our way. Let's leave this place. A loud shout rang out from the crowd. A warrior took the lead and sent out a palm strike. The palm image was like a mountain as it blasted towards the holy beast at the exit of the valley. Bang! However, that same beast was extremely strong. It swiped out with its gigantic claws, sending a stream of energy whizzing out, directly shattering the palm's shadow. Pooh! As for the person who attacked, he was actually struck by the swift and fierce energy, and his body was directly split into two. The air was dripping with fresh blood. How can this beast be so strong? Seeing this scene, everyone's eyes trembled and they cried out in shock. That person's strength has already reached the 9th tier of the heavenly mandate realm, yet he is completely vulnerable in front of this sacred beast. How is this possible? Tian looked at the sacred beast and his eyes could not help but darken. He was shocked. The strength of these sacred beasts exceeded Tian's expectations. Boom! At that moment, everyone felt a huge pressure coming from above their head. It was as if it was coming from all directions, trying to crush their martial bodies. What are you guys waiting for? Make your move. The crowd suddenly became chaotic. Many people shouted, and suddenly a violent aura shot into the sky, trying to force their way through these sacred beasts. Roar! At that moment, these sacred beasts seemed to be enraged. They all roared in unison, and their bodies rolled in the void. More than a dozen huge forces pressed down, and the strength of the aura was so strong that it shook the heavens and the earth. Bang, 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 ah! At the next moment, the endless sound of collisions sounded in the void, and the entire valley was filled with shrill screams. In just the blink of an eye, hundreds of warriors died on the spot, and thousands more were directly injured. The combined attack of more than a dozen sacred beasts was extremely fierce, and it was not something that these warriors could resist at all. Damn it! Seeing this, Tian's eyes suddenly darkened. With a low roar, he directly opened the soul of the sky. The sword of the sky streaked across the void, piercing the sky. Sword will exploded in an instant, condensing into a huge sword shadow, blasting at a sacred beast. Roar! The sacred beast seemed to feel threatened and let out a deep roar. Its pair of blood-red eyes were filled with bloodlust, and it did not try to avoid the attack. With a slight movement, it charged straight at Tian. Bang! As the sacred beast charged at Tian, a strange force was emitted from its body, like a protective barrier. It used its flesh and blood to shatter Tian's sword shadow, and continued to press down on Tian. Tian's eyes froze, and he could not help but let out a cry of surprise, and his expression changed immediately. He did not expect the strength of the sacred beast to be this terrifying. Bang! Following this, his figure immediately backed away, but he was still one step too slow. He was hit by the shockwave from the sacred beast's body, and his figure was sent flying. While he was still in midair, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Tian retreated a few thousand meters before he could stabilize his body, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. Although the attack just now did not cause him any serious injuries, it made him realize how powerful these sacred beasts were. Tian! At that moment, a panicked cry was heard. Tian turned around and saw that the Emperor of the Underworld was being attacked by a sacred beast. The Emperor of the Underworld had been forced into a corner of the valley, and his life was on the line. Sacred heaven-defying sword, sacrifice of the sun. Tian's eyes darkened, and without hesitation, he struck out with the sword in the sky once again. The sword's shadow shot up into the sky, and like a giant mountain, it headed straight for the sacred beast. Kaboom! The sacred beast seemed to be too focused and did not notice anything else. Before it could react, it was struck by the sword's shadow, and its body trembled slightly in midair. A bloody wound appeared on its body, and half of its body was dyed red. Roar! It abruptly turned around and let out a low roar. Staring at Nyetian with its bloodthirsty and ferocious eyes, it charged towards Nyetian. Nyetian's countenance changed. He slashed out with his sword, and his silhouette hurriedly retreated. Earlier, he had unleashed his full strength, but he only managed to injure the sacred beast. From this, one could see how strong the sacred beast's body was. Swish! The sword's shadow failed to block the sacred beast's attack. Instead, it was directly smashed into pieces by the sacred beast. After that, the sacred beast's huge claws slashed down, and a cold glint of light appeared, piercing through the air. The cold glint of light seemed to be able to tear apart space itself, and it shot towards Nyetian. Nyetian did not dare to take this attack head-on. His astral soul wings appeared on his back, and he dodged 100 meters to the side, evading the attack head-on. However, a wound was left on his chest, and blood gushed out like a fountain. Bang! And at this moment, the cold glint of light slammed into the mountain wall, and actually split half of the mountain into two. What a close shave! Nyetian steadied himself, and his eyes trembled with fear. Chapter 3802. Nyetian took a deep breath and swept his gaze across the valley. The ground was covered in blood and countless corpses were lying everywhere. They were all dead. In just a moment, more than half of the warriors who had entered the valley had been killed by these sacred beasts. This won't do. If this goes on, we will all die here. Nyetian's face was gloomy as he thought to himself. Nyetian, look carefully. Among these saint beasts there are 5 that are different from the others. Right at this moment, the little fat cat's voice rang out, reminding Nyetian. Nyetian's eyes narrowed and he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then, his consciousness swept across the 15 sacred beasts one by one. He quickly discovered that the aura of 5 sacred beasts was obviously weaker than the other 10. Moreover, the aura of calamity power on these 5 sacred beasts was much stronger. I understand. These 5 sacred beasts are the 5 calamity spirits. Nyetian's eyes blazed as he was pleasantly surprised. The 5 sacred beasts that Fat Cat pointed out were obviously different from the other sacred beasts. The aura of calamity power was very strong. It was very likely that they were the 5 calamity spirit. No wonder the 5 calamity spirits disappeared after disappearing into the valley. It turned out that they had hidden themselves in the stone sculptures. Nyetian guessed that 10 of the 15 stone sculptures originally had sacred beasts, while the other 5 should be empty. After the 5 calamity spirits entered the stone sculptures, they unsealed the stone sculptures and awakened the sacred beast. Nyetian, take down the calamity spirits and these sacred beasts will be sealed again. Fat Cat's voice sounded again and said excitedly. Okay. Nyetian's mouth twitched as he agreed. Then, the Sky sword slashed through the void and released 5 sword essences, accurately marking the 5 calamity spirit. Everyone, listen up. These 5 sacred beasts are the calamity spirit. Kill them and we will be fine, Nyetian said to everyone in a clear voice. Even if the strength of the 5 tribulation spirits was slightly weaker than the other sacred beasts, it was impossible for him to win by himself. He still needed everyone to work together. The 5 saint beasts are tribulation spirits? Everyone's eyes trembled when they heard what Nyetian said. Their faces changed as they became confused. Their perception wasn't as strong as Nyetian's, so they couldn't tell the difference between these saint beasts. However, Bodhi Z and the others had very strong perception. They could tell the difference between a tribulation spirit and an ordinary holy beast at a glance. Everyone, listen up. If you don't want to die here, then do your best to hold back the other saint beast. At that moment, the Devil's Knight finally reacted. He let out a low roar and swept his eyes across the crowd. Then, his figure moved, charging towards one of the holy beasts. Boom! 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 In the next moment the other cultivators moved as well. Their auras soared into the sky as they directly attacked, shrouding the 5 sacred beasts. Roar! 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 The other sacred beasts reacted and roared. Their huge bodies rolled, wanting to kill the Devil's Knight and the others. Devil's Knight, Nietion, and the others were attacked by the sacred beasts. They had no choice but to dodge and retreat to the side of the valley. The Devil's Knight's face was gloomy. His eyes were extremely cold. He was extremely murderous as he roared, "You people down there, why aren't you attacking? Are you waiting for death? Attack!" Everyone reacted and no longer hesitated. They all attacked. Although everyone here wanted to fight for the tribulation spirit, they had to work together in the face of the current situation. They had to deal with these sacred beasts first. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, terrifying attacks appeared and bombarded the remaining 10 sacred beasts. The void rumbled and the entire valley trembled. The 10 sacred beasts' bodies were very strong, but in the face of so many attacks, even if they weren't seriously injured, they were still held back. Kill! Seeing this, the Devil's Knight's eyes changed. They were extremely dark and demonic runes appeared all over his body. The dark demonic sword appeared in his hand and he blasted it at one of the sacred beasts. Awoo! The sword's shadow arrived in an instant and landed on one of the sacred beasts, leaving a bloody wound that was dozens of meters long. The sacred beast couldn't take the pain and howled. Although the sacred beasts in the stone sculptures were awakened by the sacred beasts, their strength was not as strong as the sacred beast. Very good. Seeing this, Nietion's mouth twitched into a cold smile. The wings on his back suddenly shook and sword will surged out of his body. His entire body stirred up a storm of sword will in the void and blasted directly at one of the sacred beasts. Boom! Immediately, a muffled sound was heard. The sacred beast was sent flying by Nietion's sword and crashed heavily into the cliff on the side of the mountain. Almost at the same time, the blazing 9-edged blade, the Emperor of the Dead, the Bodhi, the Holy Son of all evil, and several other Tiani Saint Lords also attacked. The other 3 sacred beasts were also hit and were severely injured. In the air, there was blood everywhere and the smell of blood filled the entire valley. Roar dash! The sacred beasts suddenly went berserk when the sacred beasts were attacked. They roared like thunder and the power in their bodies burst out like stormy wave. They rushed toward Nietion and the others. Damn it! Nietion saw this and his eyes darkened. He couldn't help but growl. Immediately, he moved in an instant. He didn't dare to face these sacred beasts head-on and could only avoid them. Roar! However, one of the sacred beasts had its eyes on Nietion. With a low growl, its blood-red eyes locked onto Nietion. Its whole body surged with the aura of the sacred beast. Its speed was extremely fast, like a moving mountain, it rushed toward him. Nietion felt the impact coming toward him and his expression changed. Immediately, sword will gushed out from his body and he stabbed at the sacred beast. Then, he flew backward and used the rebound force of the sword will to rush toward one of the sacred beasts. He had to get rid of the sacred beasts in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, these crazy sacred beasts would kill everyone in the blink of an eye. The sacred beast rushed out of the sword's shadow and rushed toward Nietion, but it was still a little too slow. 9 limits of the starry sky, Yang annihilation. Nietion was high in the sky and roared. The sky sword slashed out. The sword's shadow whizzed out and went straight for one of the sacred beasts. Bang! The sacred beast seemed to be frightened. Its body froze and it didn't have time to escape. It was directly hit by the sword's shadow. Its huge head exploded and turned into a bloody light in the air. It worked! Nietion's eyes trembled as he cried out in surprise. At the same time, the sacred beast's huge body froze in the void. Then, it turned into stone and fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. Nietion's eyes narrowed. He looked down and saw that the other sacred beast had also turned into a stone statue and shattered. He immediately understood. One sacred beast controlled two sacred beasts. 5 sacred beasts controlled 5 sacred beasts. Nietion. At this moment, the fat cat's voice suddenly sounded. It seemed very excited. Nietion suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. In the bloody light, a scarlet vortex appeared. The aura inside was surging. It was the power of the sacred beast. Chapter 3803. Now that Nietion had killed the Tribulation Spirit's holy beast form, the Tribulation Spirit's true form had been revealed. He looked at the crimson flames surging in the void, and his eyes trembled with excitement. He didn't know the relationship between the Tribulation Spirits and the power of the 5 calamities, but he knew that the Tribulation Spirits were the first step to obtaining the power of the 5 calamities. Nietion moved in the blink of an eye. Sword intent surged from his body, and he charged at the Tribulation Spirit like a ray of sword light. Boom! In the air, the clear sky sword pierced out. A sword intent gushed out from the sword tip and shrouded the fire Tribulation Spirit. Roar! However, right at that moment, a violent roar suddenly echoed out from the void. Immediately afterward, a terrifying force whizzed over, directly shattering Nietion's sword intent, and at the same time, forced Nietion to fly 1,000 meters away. Damn it! Nietion steadied himself and growled with a frown. If it wasn't for this holy beast, he would have gotten the Tribulation Spirit already. Roar! Then, the holy beast let out a low, hoarse roar. Its pair of fierce and ruthless eyes trembled as it stared at Nietion with a deep, murderous look. In the next moment, he pounced towards Nietion, his raging aura surging out of his body like a torrential wave of killing intent that pressed down on Nietion. Nietion's expression flickered as he sensed the pressure pressing down on him. He immediately reacted by frantically backing away and dodging to the side. Boom! The tremendous power whizzed past and slammed into the mountain behind Nietion. The entire valley shook as if it was going to collapse. Nietion's eyes narrowed and he steadied himself. His expression was incredibly dark. It was almost impossible for him to kill this holy beast with his strength. Nietion, have fun with this animal. The Tribulation Spirit is mine. Lai Yinjufeng's voice came from the sky. It was cold and mocking. Nietion looked up and saw Lai Yinjufeng charging at the Tribulation Spirit like a ball of fire. Damn it! Nietion's face sank and he growled. Just as he was about to move, the holy beast charged towards him again. Get lost! This time, he was directly enraged. With a roar, the sword will around him skyrocketed to the extreme. His sword momentum suddenly erupted, and he slashed out with his sword. The sword's shadow whistled like a giant dragon, directly attacking the holy beast. Bang! However, this all-out attack only caused the sacred beast to pause for a moment before it was crushed into pieces. Boom! In the next instant, that saint beast dashed over. Its aura burst forth like a landslide, rumbling down. The surrounding space seemed as though it was going to explode at any moment. Nietion's face darkened as he felt the terrifying pressure. However, right at this moment, the saint beast suddenly paused in the void, and then turned into stone in an instant. After that, it crashed to the ground and turned into a pile of rubble. Nietion, behind you! Nietion raised his head and saw the Bodhi seed killing a sacred beast with a single slash. The Bodhi seed's eyes darkened slightly as he shouted. Nietion's expression flickered as he turned around and saw a Tribulation Spirit standing behind him, as if it had been startled by what he had just seen. Die! He immediately reacted. With a low shout, the clear sky sword slashed through the air. The moment the sword's shadow landed, the Tribulation Spirit holy beast was directly cut into two. The air was dripping with blood. The wood Tribulation Spirit. Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he saw a cyan vortex in the area where the tribulation spirit had been killed. His eyes flickered as he exclaimed in shock. He could sense a strong wood-based aura from the whirlpool. At the same time, there was also the aura of the tribulation spirit. This meant that the green whirlpool was the wood tribulation spirit, and the wood tribulation spirit was what the Bodhi seed needed. Nie Tian moved like a ray of light. He released his sword intent and restrained the wood tribulation spirit. Then, he extended his hand and pulled it over. Got it! The Bodhi seed's eyes lit up with joy and excitement when he saw this. At the same time, the other sacred beasts were also killed by the other cultivators. The rest of the sacred beasts turned to stone and fell to the ground. Of the 5 sacred beasts, the fire tribulation spirit was in Lian Jiufeng's hands, the wood tribulation spirit was in Nie Tian's hands, and the Bodhi seed was in possession of the earth tribulation spirit. The other 2 sacred beasts were still being fought over. In the sky, dozens of cultivators stared at the remaining metal tribulation spirits and water tribulation spirits with burning eyes. Below them, all the cultivators were itching to give it a try. In the next moment, all of them moved at almost the same time. Nie Tian and Lian Jiufeng charged at the metal tribulation spirit. On the other side, Devil's Knight and the all-evil Saint Child charged at the water tribulation spirit. Of course, everyone else was charging at the metal tribulation spirit as well. Boom boom boom. The air was filled with terrifying explosions as countless powers clashed against one another. The world shook and space-time seemed like it was about to explode. Boom. Nie Tian's sword intent surged as he forced his way through the crowd and charged at the metal tribulation spirit. At the same time, Lian Jiufeng also charged out of the crowd. The power of metal tribulation spirit was like an erupting volcano. No one dared to approach him. Nie Tian, the metal tribulation spirit is mine. Lian Jiufeng looked at Nie Tian cold with extremely dark eyes. Is that so? Nie Tianling smiled and circulated the 9 dragon veins in his body. The marks of the ancestral dragon grew violent. Lian Jiufeng had already taken the fire tribulation spirit from him. He couldn't let him take the metal tribulation spirit. Humph! Lian Jiufeng sneered and waved his hand. The golden flame ancestral dragon appeared. Its enormous body tumbled through the air and crashed down on Nie Tian like a mountain. Nie Tian was stunned when he saw the golden flame ancestral dragon. He had almost forgotten that Lian Jiufeng had such a person with him. However, the golden flame ancestral dragon's appearance had changed a little. There were 2 dragon horns on its head. They were incredibly sharp and domineering. It had also grown a lot bigger and its aura stronger than before. It seemed that the golden flame ancestral dragon had grown stronger after Lian Jiufeng's growth. Nie Tian was a little puzzled. According to forefather Wuming, there were only 4 ancestral dragons in the world. Was the golden flame ancestral dragon a true ancestral dragon? Chapter 3804. Roar! 2 deep dragon roars resounded in the sky at almost the same time. They stacked on top of each other and caused the surrounding space to tremble. This! The crowd couldn't help but exclaim when they saw this. They didn't dare to get any closer. They clearly didn't think that Nie Tian and Lian Jiufeng could unleash such a terrifying draconic aura. Bang! In the next moment, the golden flame ancestral dragon and the dragon shadow formed by the ancestral dragon chi collided. Like 2 mountains, there was a loud explosion in the void. Suddenly, the entire world seemed like it was going to collapse. The golden flame ancestral dragon's body froze for a moment before it was sent flying. It smashed heavily into a mountain wall and caused the entire mountain to collapse. As for the dragon, it charged towards Lian Jiufeng. Lian Jiufeng's eyes shook. He clearly didn't think that his golden flame ancestral dragon would fail to stop Nie Tian. Bang! Then, before he could even react, he was struck by the dragon's shadow and was sent flying through the air. At the same time, Nyetian charged over like a ray of light and grabbed the golden tribulation spirit firmly in his hand. Damn it! Lien Jiufeng steadied himself. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his lips, and he looked extremely wretched. He growled in exasperation. He had underestimated Nyetian's ancestral dragon aura. He didn't think the latter would be this powerful. Lien Jiufeng, you really want the golden tribulation spirit, don't you? Nie Tianling's lips curled into a smile. His eyes were filled with mockery and provocation. Nie Tian, do you really think you can keep the golden tribulation spirit just because you have it? Take a good look below. There are so many people watching. Lien Jiufeng sneered and growled. Don't worry. None of you have the chance. Nie Tian swept his gaze across the crowd below and smiled strangely. Then, he raised his head and swallowed the golden tribulation spirit. This unexpected scene caused everyone's eyes to tremble, and they all cried out in alarm. Obviously, they'd never imagined that Nie Tian would actually be so ferocious and directly swallow the tribulation spirit whole. Nie Tian, you. Lien Jiufeng's eyes darkened, and his face turned murderous. He was speechless. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he smiled complacently. So what? At this moment, an astonishing change was happening in his body. A tremendous force was crazily attacking him, causing the soul in the sky to become abnormally active. Vaguely, Nie Tian sensed that a surge of power was slowly awakening within him. When this power was awakened, it made him feel like his power was about to explode. Lien Jiufeng stared at Nie Tian with a dark expression on his face. His eyes were shaking and he couldn't say anything for a very long time. Nie Tian didn't say anything. He came to the Bodhi seed and said, "Would tribulation spirit for your earth tribulation spirit." Amen. The Bodhi seed smiled faintly and took out the earth tribulation spirit. He needed the wood tribulation spirit, and the Netherworld Emperor needed the earth tribulation spirit. Right now, Nie Tian, the Netherworld Emperor, and the Bodhi seed were working together, so it was normal for them to exchange tribulation spirits. The Netherworld Emperor immediately came to Nie Tian's side after he and the Bodhi seed exchanged the tribulation spirit. He couldn't wait any longer. This is the earth tribulation spirit you want. Nie Tian passed the earth tribulation spirit to the Netherworld Emperor and said coldly, "Don't forget our agreement." "Don't worry, I won't hurt her." The Netherworld Emperor accepted the earth tribulation spirit and smiled. Hurting Cher wasn't beneficial to him. All he needed was the power of the 5 disasters. Nie Tian's eyes darkened slightly, and his expression was cold. Nie Tian, you're very smart. You know that a tribulation spirit can be merged with directly. The Bodhi seed looked at Nie Tian and said with a smile. A tribulation spirit was a source of power in itself. It was also something that could draw upon the power of the 5 disasters. When a cultivator merged with a tribulation spirit, their body would produce a surge of heavenly tribulation energy, and the heavenly tribulation energy would automatically draw upon the power of the 5 disasters. After saying this, the Bodhi seed swallowed the wood tribulation spirit just like Nie Tian. The corner of the Netherworld Emperor's mouth twitched, and he swallowed the earth tribulation spirit as well. On the other side, Lien Jiufeng and Devil's Knight's eyes flashed when they saw this, and they swallowed the tribulation spirit as well. Lien Jiufeng swallowed the fire tribulation spirit, and Devil's Knight swallowed the water tribulation spirit. Mo Yi managed to obtain the water tribulation spirit among the crowd of robbers. The others could only watch as Nie Tian and the others swallowed the tribulation spirit. They couldn't stop them, so it was easy to imagine how unwilling they were. This was especially true for the Saint Child of all evil. He also possessed the core of the world, so he needed tribulation spirits and the power of the 5 disasters more than ordinary people. The Saint Child of all evil stared at Nie Tian with a dark expression. He hated Nie Tian. If the latter hadn't injured him, he might have been able to snatch a strand of the power of the 5 disasters. Boom! Not long after the 5 of them swallowed the tribulation spirit, a tremendous rumble suddenly resounded from the ground. A terrifying power surged out from the ground, and the ground began to crack as if there was an earthquake. The power of the 5 disasters is about to appear. The Bodhisattva's eyes flickered with joy when he saw this. He seemed extremely excited. The power of the 5 disasters? Nye Tian glanced at the Bodhisattva, then at the ground. He was clearly confused. So the power of the 5 disasters was hidden deep underground. Nye Tian, the mountain range we are in is called the 5 disasters mountain range. The Bodhisattva noticed Nye Tian's confusion. He smiled and transmitted his voice. At the bottom of the mountain range there are 5 roots of tribulation, also known as the 5 elemental roots. It is these roots that nurture the power of the 5 disasters. Every 10,000 years, the 5 elemental roots will nurture the power of the 5 disasters. When the power of the 5 disasters matures, the first thing to appear are the 5 tribulation spirits. Those who can fuse with the spirits will obtain the recognition of the power of the 5 disasters. Nye Tian frowned when he heard the Bodhisattva's words, but he nodded his head. He didn't fully understand, but he roughly understood that there was something beneath the 5 disasters mountain range that could nurture the power of the 5 disasters once every 10,000 years. Nye Tian and the others had fused with the spirits, so the power of the 5 disasters was born. Everyone panicked when they saw the ground cracking. They quickly retreated, not daring to get close to Nye Tian's group. No one knew what would happen next. Boom, 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 boom. Right at this moment, a terrifying rumble rang out from the ground as 5 terrifying streams of energy tunneled out from the ground. Like 5 gigantic dragons, they burst out of the ground and brought about an endless tempest in the void. The power of 5 tribulations. Nye Tian's eyes flickered with astonishment at the sight of this. He could sense an incomparably dense tribulation energy within the 5 energies. It was far greater than the tribulation energy contained within the tribulation spirit. Bring it on! The Bodhisattva's eyes burned with passion as he shouted. He seemed to have gone mad. Chapter 3805. Boom, 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 boom. High up in the sky, 5 incomparably enormous tribulation powers surged like raging waves, wreaking havoc in the void, as if they were going to devour the entire world in front of them. In the next moment, the 5 tribulation power storms began to envelop Nye Tian and the others, like giant beasts, engulfing everything in their path. Before Tian and the others could react, they were enveloped by the 5 tribulation power storms. Nye Tian was in the midst of the tribulation power storms, feeling an incomparably enormous pressure coming from all directions, making it impossible for him to resist. He could only silently endure it. His eyes narrowed, and a look of panic appeared on his face. Nye Tian, don't be afraid, the 5 tribulation power will not harm you, it will fuse with you. Fat Cat laughed, reassuring Nye Tian. It's really a direct fusion. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed, he was overjoyed. He did not expect that when he fused with the tribulation spirit, the 5 tribulation power would directly fuse with him. This was a pleasant surprise. He originally thought that after fusing with the tribulation spirit, it would not be so easy to fuse with the 5 tribulation power. Boom! At this moment, within the 5 tribulation storm, an enormous tribulation power whistled out, rushing straight into Nye Tian's martial body, causing his entire body to tremble. At this moment, his martial body suffered a great impact, as if it was about to collapse. Nye Tian did not expect the moment the tribulation power entered his body, the impact would be so great. His face immediately became hideous and twisted. However, in the next moment, the tribulation power storm unleashed even more violent tribulation power that mercilessly battered Nye Tian's martial body, making him feel as if every meridian, every bone, and every piece of flesh in his martial body were about to be torn to shreds. Suddenly, however, the intense pain instantly spread throughout his body, causing Nye Tion's body to tremble slightly. Numerous bloody wounds appeared on the surface of his martial body. The smell of blood permeated his body. It was an extremely tragic sight. However, this was not the worst part. The worst part was that due to the robbery power continuously pouring in, the wounds on his body were unable to heal. Instead, they burst open wider and wider, causing his entire body to be drenched in blood, as if he was bathing in a spring of blood. The power of the heavenly tribulation was a power that could only be absorbed when a martial artist advanced to the heavenly tribulation Sage King realm. And Nye Tion was only in the heavenly mandate realm. Even if the power of the 5 calamities was different from the ordinary power of heaven's tribulation and the impact was not as great, it was still hard for him to bear. Nye Tion's martial body was considered strong among the 5 people who could withstand the power of the 5 tribulations. It was difficult for him to withstand it, so one could imagine what the situation was like for the other 4. Next, as the robbery power continued to pour in, Nye Tion could clearly feel that the soul of the sky became more and more active. It began to release a warm power to nourish his martial body, making him feel a lot more relaxed. So that's how it is. Nye Tion's heart trembled and he let out a cry of joy. Just now, he had already felt that his martial body could not bear it anymore. At the critical moment, the power released by the soul of the sky stabilized his martial body. Thinking the other 4 people's martial bodies would also be protected by the heart of heaven and earth. This was also why ordinary martial artists could not integrate the power of the 5 calamities, or because there was a great risk in integrating the power of the 5 calamities, because their bodies did not have the protection of the heart of heaven and earth. After a while, the violent robbery power gradually stabilized under the influence of the soul of the sky. It slowly merged into Nye Tion's martial body and then into the soul of the sky. Nye Tion Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Next, he only needed to slowly absorb the robbery power and he would be able to successfully awaken the seal of heaven and earth. Then, after a few hours, Nye Tion felt the storm of robbery power around him slowly weaken, and the power of the soul of the sky increased to an unprecedented level. Bang! 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 Faintly, he heard a vibrating sound, as if his heart was beating, which made him feel an inexplicable sense of excitement. The seal of heaven and earth of the sky sword is about to be unsealed. Fat Cat's eyes burned with excitement as she said in surprise. Nye Tion nodded heavily. He also felt the feeling of power that was about to come out. Boom! After a while, Nye Tion felt an enormous power appear. It surged violently and suddenly rushed out like a tsunami. Along then, a terrible momentum rose into the sky, surging between heaven and earth, vast and endless. Outside Nye Tion's body, Endless Sword will condensed into a huge sword shadow, tens of thousands of meters long, making him look like a giant sword standing between heaven and earth, sharp and fierce. The people below felt the aura of Sword will coming from the sky. Their eyes couldn't help but tremble. The shock in their hearts was perfectly written on their faces. They couldn't imagine how Nye Tion, who only had the strength of the 3rd tier of the heavenly mandate realm, could release such a terrible power. Boom! After a long time, the sword shadow outside Nye Tion's body disappeared and dissipated in the void. It turned into a ripple of sword will, surging in all directions. Nye Tion opened his eyes slightly. His eyes were sharp like an unsheathed sword. At this time, he clearly felt that the sword will in his body was much stronger than before, and there was a feeling of explosion. The 1st tier of the Oracle realm. Nye Tion's eyes suddenly shrank and he exclaimed in surprise. The soul of the sky merged with the power of 5 disasters and awakened a seal of heaven and earth, which directly broke through the realm of sword will to the 1st tier of the Oracle realm. Sword. The ninth tier of Sword Will and the first tier of the Oracle Realm seemed to be only one tier apart, but the gap between them was like heaven and earth. Entering the Divine Oracle stage meant that Nietion's sword intent had undergone a qualitative improvement. His combat strength at this time was at least several times stronger than before. The seal of heaven and earth is indeed powerful. Nietion's palm turned in the void, and the sky sword appeared in his hand. His eyes were glowing with a fiery light, and he smiled faintly. Hold the moment he held the sky sword, he could clearly feel that the aura in the body of the sword was much stronger than before. Such as this strong feeling of aura meant that the sky sword was much stronger than before. How there were a total of 9 seals of heaven and earth on the sky sword. At this moment, only one seal was unsealed, and there was already such an improvement. If all 9 seals were used, the power would be unimaginable. Just as old ancestor Wu Ming said, the seal of heaven and earth was used to suppress the origin weapon of the heart of heaven and earth. Once the seal was unsealed, the origin weapon's power would be completely released. Near the corner of Tion's mouth twitched slightly, and he put the sky sword away. He glanced at the other 4 and saw that the tribulation storm was still there. It seemed that they hadn't merged with the power of 5 disasters. Stinking brat, you've really fused with rank 5 power? Right at this moment, a voice that caused one to be displeased sounded out.